Chapter 12:12. Although Lin Sun felt that Bai Lingshi's angry and embarrassed look was quite attractive, he had no time to appreciate it. In his perception, monstrous killing intent was coming from a very far place at a high speed. Lin Sun was shocked by the strong killing intent. He realized that there were definitely many opponents coming this time. And there were many masters. Well, I'll catch up with you next time. Lin Sun made a decision and turned away. You, Ji Xingyao cried. Anything else? Lin Sun looked back at her. Ji Xingyao was stunned and then snorted. Don't you want compensation? Lin Sun smiled. Forget it, as long as you don't get angry with me. As he spoke, his figure had disappeared in the distance. Bah! Who would be angry with a rascal like you? Ji Xingyao snorted. Her pretty face was inexplicably hot and ashamed. This guy couldn't say anything good. Senior Sister Ji, you and Demon Lin. Someone couldn't help asking. But before he finished, Ji Xingyao interrupted him coldly. There's no relationship at all. If you dare to gossip, don't blame me for not considering our friendship. There was a trace of anger in her voice. But in the ears of others, it seemed that she was trying to cover up something. Ji Xingyao also noticed that everyone looked at her strangely. She couldn't help but feel annoyed. She took a deep breath and calmed down, saying, It's time for us to go. In the distance, the amazing killing intent spread like a black cloud and covered them. If they didn't leave now, there would be endless troubles in the future. What about the Golden Mist Mountain? Someone asked. Whoever wants it can have it, Ji Xingyao said quickly. Immediately they chose to leave. However, halfway, Ji Xingyao chose to leave alone. Junior Sister Ji, where are you going? Emo Tianhe asked. I'm going to do something, Ji Xingyao answered without looking back. As she spoke, her clothes fluttered, and she disappeared into the distance like a rainbow. What's Senior Sister Ji going to do? Many people were puzzled. It must have something to do with Demon Lin. Emo Tianhe's face was gloomy. Boom! Not long after they left, many figures of King Realm descended near the Golden Mist Mountain. It was as if dark clouds covered the earth, and its momentum was astonishing. He got a head start again. Damn it! Continue the chase. His roar surged through the surroundings, causing the space in the surroundings to tremble, and it revealed boundless rage and hatred. However, Lin Sun had already stopped the bloodbath in blessed land of Spiritual Mountain. In the following pursuit, they had completely lost track of Lin Sun. What infuriated Wu Lingfeng and the others the most was that the other major forces in the distant fire region had brazenly attacked at this time, taking advantage of the situation to plunder the conquered blessed lands. Because of this, Wu Lingfeng and the others were in a difficult situation. No matter how much they hated Lin Sun, they knew that they had lost the chance to kill him. So they changed their action decisively and went to seize the blessed land that originally belonged to them. Today, the distant fire realm was in a state of turmoil. According to some statistics, in less than 4 hours, Lin Sun alone conquered the 4 blessed lands, namely Flying Star Mountain, Wild Elephant Mountain, Mingtsue Mountain and Xingxia Mountain. Everywhere, blood flowed like rivers and smoke filled the air. In less than 4 hours, there were no less than 15 peerless King Realm strongmen who died in Lin Sun's hand. It was shocking. In the upper 9 realms, the peerless King Realm was like the existence standing on the top of the mountain. They could roar in all directions and gallop in all directions. Ordinary King Realm strongmen were no different from chickens and dogs in their eyes. Not to mention those who hadn't been promoted to King Realm strongmen, they were nothing. But Lin Sun killed all the peerless King Realm strongmen like tearing a painting. This caused a great shock and horror to other peerless King Realm strongmen. At the same time, because of Lin Sun's revenge, there was a greater bloody storm in the distant fire region. All the major forces took the opportunity to seize the conquered blessed lands. Wu Lingfeng and the other major forces were naturally unwilling to give up, which led to the collision between the major forces. However, all this had nothing to do with Lin Sun. After leaving, he went straight back to Star Mountain. But Star Mountain had already been turned into a ruin, and even the primitive spiritual veins inside had suffered irreparable damage. Seeing this, Lin Sun could only shake his head. He didn't sigh with emotion, but just felt a little pity. Whose fault was it that such a blessed land was destroyed? With such a big movement, whether it is Alu or the old toad, as long as they come to the distant fire region, they should know that I am here. Lin Sun was lost in thought. This time, the revenge against Golden Crow and other major forces had not been carried out to the end, but the effect had been achieved. If he continued to fight, he would be in danger. The enemies were not fools, and they would definitely fight back in every possible way. However, Lin Sun didn't intend to give up. If you don't kill a snake, you will be harmed. Years of experience and lessons had made Lin Sun deeply understand that he must not show any mercy to his enemies. Now, it was the 2nd year since he entered the peerless domain. There were still 8 years left for him to practice and become stronger. At the same time, there were also opportunities to settle accounts with those enemies. I'm afraid that Yun Qi Bai has already set foot in the Peerless King realm. If he knows that I am in the distant fire region, will he dare to come to see me? Lin Sun thought of Yun Qi Bai again. He had made a decision that when he reached the realm of the Tao of the Real Dragon and Star Obliteration, he would go to find Yun Qi Bai and completely end this blood feud that had been postponed for many years. Suddenly, Lin Sun felt something and woke up from his thoughts. He looked into the distance with a trace of surprise in his eyes. There, Ji Xingyao, dressed in white, with black hair like a waterfall, walked in the void like a fairy in a painting. "Miss Ji? Are you here to continue chatting with me?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. Ji Xingyao stared at Lin Sun coldly and said, "Do you think I'm here to chat with you?" This guy was so annoying. How could the dignified demon Lin be so frivolous? Before Lin Sun could speak, she directly stated her purpose and said, "A few days ago, I entered the forbidden land of Styx and met a person by chance." Lin Sun showed interest in her words. He knew very well what a horrible place the forbidden land of Styx was. But why did Ji Xingyao mention this to him? It was a young man in a green robe. He was quite handsome, but he was too proud and conceited, Ji Xingyao recalled. It was the old toad. Lin Sun was shocked. He had long suspected whether the old toad had been transmitted to the forbidden land of Styx like himself when he went to the distant fire realm from the realm of immortals. What Ji Xingyao said at the moment undoubtedly proved this. However, perhaps because he was too proud, he was accidentally involved in a dangerous place. When Ji Xingyao said this, Lin Sun couldn't help but say, "Dangerous place? Miss Ji, can you explain it clearly?" He was a little worried. Ji Xingyao had intended to ridicule Lin Sun, but when she saw his frowning and serious look, she immediately held back. She sorted out her thoughts and told him the whole story of her meeting the old toad. It turned out that about half a month ago, Ji Xingyao had gone to a mysterious canyon in the forbidden land of Styx to explore opportunities. That mysterious canyon was barren and shrouded in bloody mist all year round, which was extremely strange and ominous. Just when Ji Xingyao was hesitating whether to go in and have a look, she heard an excited cry. Walking into the canyon filled with bloody mist, she found that there was a dry well in the canyon, from which the cry for help came. Then, Ji Xingyao saw the old toad trapped in the dry well. He was extremely embarrassed, with his hands and legs supporting the wall of the well. His body was entangled with fine bloody chains, which were dragging him to the depths of the dry well. He looked extremely embarrassed and strenuous. In particular, his ankle was firmly grasped by a pale, shriveled and old hand, which made him unable to move at all. He could only shout loudly. Ji Xingyao had intended to save him, but was stopped by the old toad, who said that this was the divine blood well, the most horrible and weird place in the world. Speaking of this, Ji Xingyao snorted coldly. "This guy has been trapped, but his tone is very arrogant. He said that if I approached him, I would not only fail to save him, but also harm him. Lin Sun hurriedly said, "This guy is like this. Don't bother with him. What's next?" Ji Xingyao said casually, "I'm leaving." "Leaving?" Lin Sun was stunned. Ji Xingyao said, "If I didn't leave, could I still stay there? But before I left, that guy asked me to pass a message to you." "What message?" Lin Sun's heart tightened. Ji Xingyao's expression was a little strange. She imitated the tone of the old toad at that time and said, "He said to tell Lin Sun that I found a great opportunity for him, and ask him to come and save me quickly." Lin Sun's face darkened. This guy was already in danger, but he still spoke so arrogantly. Was he really not afraid of death? He took a deep breath and said, "And then?" After that, he gave up resisting and was dragged into the depths of the well, and no trace of him could be found anymore. "I suspect that there's probably another world at the bottom of the so-called Nether God blood well," Ji Xingyao said in a low voice. Knowing this, Lin Sun also felt a little heavy in his heart. The old toad actually entered the divine blood well, which he had never thought before. Taking a deep breath, he cupped his hands and said seriously, "Thank you, Miss Ji, for telling me all this. I will repay you in the future." This news was really too important. If Ji Xingyao deliberately concealed it, it was very likely that the time to save the old toad would be delayed. Ji Xingyao raised the corners of her mouth and said with a playful smile, "I didn't know that you, demon god Lin, also know how to be grateful?" Lin Sun was not in the mood to joke. He said, "Miss Ji, can you tell me the specific location of the divine blood well?" Ji Xingyao said, "This is why I came to you. I have a remnant of a scroll in my hand, which has been preserved from the ancient times to the present. Some secrets are recorded in it, and it is very likely to be related to the mysterious place under the divine blood well." Lin Sun suddenly understood. "So, you also plan to explore it again?" Ji Xingyao nodded. "Yes, what do you think?" Lin Sun, of course, had no problem and happily agreed. P.S. Tonight at 7 o'clock, the goldfish will be waiting for everyone in the Zongheng Novels app. At that time, there will be an activity post pinned to the top. Everyone can ask questions in it and fight for the floor. 66, 100, 188, 266, 300. There will be prizes sent out on these floors. Those who ask questions and are answered by the goldfish will have a greater chance to win exclusive customized prizes. Chapter 12-13. Ji Xingyao said, "Well, let's set off in 10 days. Going with Lin Sun was equivalent to having one more powerful companion, who could take care of him when he went to the Forbidden Land of Sticks. 10 days later?" Lin Sun frowned. Ji Xingyao was stunned and realized that Lin Sun didn't know much about the Forbidden Land of Sticks. She explained, "There is only one chance to enter the Forbidden Land of Sticks every 10 days. At other times, the whole Forbidden Land of Sticks will be covered by a layer of strange power. Once you get close to it, you will meet with misfortune and die." Lin Sun's black eyes shrank. Was there such a thing? He walked in the Forbidden Land of Sticks for a day and a night and experienced countless fatal dangers. But from the beginning to the end, he did not sense any strange or ominous power. "It seems that there are still many secrets and taboos that I don't know." Lin Sun's heart sank. The more dangerous and strange the Forbidden Land of Sticks was, the more likely it was that Old Toad would be in danger. But it was useless for Lin Sun to be impatient. He had to wait for 10 days before taking action. This guy is blessed by God, and he got the inheritance of Chun Linkong, the Burning Immortal. He won't die so easily. Lin Sun could only comfort himself in this way. Ji Xingyao didn't stay any longer. After making an appointment with Lin Sun, she left. In fact, from the fact that she took the initiative to tell Lin Sun that Old Toad was in danger, Lin Sun knew that she had indeed let go of the misunderstanding of that year and no longer hated him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have done this. Lin Sun was very happy to see this. The Forbidden Land of Sticks was known as the Great Danger in the distant Fire Realm. On its periphery, There was a vast primeval forest with towering ancient trees that covered the sky and the sun. It was shrouded in darkness all year round. Lin soon came and stood on the periphery of the forest. His spiritual awareness spread out. When it poured into the vast primeval forest, he immediately felt an unspeakable oppressive aura, which made his breath stagnate. But this didn't affect Lin soon. As he ran the meditating magic, his huge spiritual awareness spread into the depths of the forest like a tide. During this process, the oppressive and ghastly aura grew stronger and stranger. This made the pressure on Lin's mind increase rapidly. His whole body was taut like a fully drawn bowstring. His chi moved silently and ran loudly to resist the pressure. Boom! From a distance, Lin Sun's black hair was flying in the air, and his whole body was flowing with Taoist light. His fierce, fighting intent was like a rainbow piercing through the void, collapsing the clouds in all directions. It was as if he was fighting against the strongest opponent. If other Apex Kings were to witness this scene, they would surely be awed by the aura emanating from Lin Sun's body. He was too strong, like a demon god that held up the backbone of the world. At the same time, Lin Sun's soul was shaking violently, as if there were the cries of demons and saints. His sea of consciousness was filled with mountains of white bones, seas of corpses, the collapse of heaven and earth, and the destruction of all living things. Everything was shaking his mind and assaulting his will. In the end, his sea of consciousness was filled with buzzing roars. The bloody scroll seemed to want to suck his soul into it. This is? Suddenly, a bloody river emerged in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness, in which there were strange and ominous corpses. A Buddha died, with a hole pierced through his eyebrows, and his face was full of anger. A dragon-like body was broken inch by inch, looming in the blood river, winding tens of thousands of meters long. There were saints in feather clothes and crowns. There were strange beasts with Taoist patterns on their foreheads. Without exception, they were all dead. Floating and sinking in the blood river, they were like the destination of death. Boom! Before Lin Sun could see clearly, he felt a sharp pain in his sea of consciousness. He was hit by a terrible cold force, which made him groan and withdraw his spiritual awareness without hesitation. After that, the phenomenon from before receded like tide water and vanished. At this time, Lin Sun was soaked with cold sweat. His face was slightly pale, and his deep eyes flashed with fear. That river of blood, could it be the Nether River? At this point, Lin Sun completely understood that Ji Xingyao was right. If he entered the Styx River at this time, he would definitely encounter an accident. The power covered in it was so strange and ominous that he couldn't compete with it. Whoosh! After a while, Lin Sun let out a long breath of turbid air and restrained his aura. After pondering for a moment, his figure flashed and charged into the primitive forest. This forest was just the periphery of the Styx River. Although there were many dangers, they didn't pose too much threat to Lin Sun. From today on, I'll practice here. Lin Sun made a decision. If he made full use of 10 days, it was enough to improve his combat power to a higher level. The primitive forest was full of danger, but for Lin Sun, it was a perfect place to practice martial arts and comprehend Taoism. The King Realm was divided into 3 levels: the initial realm, the middle realm, and the later realm. When the King Realm was completed, the Taoist seed in the body would also be completed. At that time, the Taoist test of longevity would be faced. If one passed the test, he could be called the first tribulation of longevity, and the Taoist seed in the body would also transform and give birth to the Taoist root. The Taoist root was regarded as the root of heaven and earth. It was rooted in the road of longevity, which meant that one had taken a new level on the road of longevity. If one couldn't pass the test, his cultivation would stop there, and there would be no hope of improvement. Or he would die. That was the risk and test one had to bear in order to cultivate immortality. It was true that the King Realm had seen through life and death, and was not afraid of the erosion of time. His soul was immortal and his life was immortal. But if he couldn't pass the test, it was doomed to be in vain. Now, Lin Sun's cultivation had reached the initial realm and he could enter the middle realm at any time. However, the combat power of the peerless king realm was not measured by cultivation. In other words, no one could give a specific standard for the combat power of the peerless king realm until now. Because this realm was unprecedented, even the sages didn't dare to define it. 3 days later. In the forest, Lin Sun sat cross-legged. The aura around him was like a furnace, rising to a higher level in an instant. The aura released made the forest rustle. The middle realm of King Realm. Lin Sun had expected that the breakthrough in cultivation was not hard at all. It was a matter of course. Buzzing in the darkness around the forest, a thunder-like buzzing sounded. Immediately, a group of fist-sized, red, six-winged blood mosquitoes rushed out and rushed towards Lin Sun with ferocious aura. Six-winged blood mosquitoes. Lin Sun opened his black eyes, which were calm. These were terrifying creatures that covered the surroundings of this primitive mountain forest. The slightest bit of movement would draw their attention. They were extremely difficult to deal with. When he entered the distant fire realm for the first time, he was chased by the six-winged blood mosquitoes. His body was not only pierced with many bloody holes, but also invaded by the poison. He was extremely embarrassed. But this time, it was completely different. Sitting on the ground, Lin Sun stretched out his right index finger and sketched a light and mysterious track in the void. At the same time, the strong power around him also ran in a strange way with this stroke, roaring and gathering at his fingertips. Then, he flicked his fingers gently. The nearby towering ancient trees, huge python-like vines, tall weeds and wildflowers, all grew crazily and were full of vitality, as if they were in the vicissitudes of time. The moment Lin Sun pointed his finger, all the ancient trees, vines, weeds, and wildflowers withered and turned into flying ash, scattering in the air. In an instant, spring and autumn rotated, and everything was overturned. It was like the history of all ages gathered in one finger, which was a terrible scene. The vitality of the six-winged blood mosquitoes rushing nearby suddenly dried up. Their bodies were shriveled as if their essence, chi and spirit were sucked out, and then they fell to the ground. Looking again, within a radius of thousands of meters, there was no grass growing. Everything turned into nothingness, as if it had been erased. Such a scene made Lin Sun's eyes flash with a touch of brilliance. The first move of Dian void-breaking finger, instant of spring and autumn. One finger turned spring and autumn, seized fate and judged life and death. This blow seemed to integrate the atmosphere of spring and autumn into one finger, which could overturn the universe, reverse the withering and flourishing, and crush everything with a dignified and majestic momentum. Lin Sun had just started to comprehend this move and only mastered a little bit of it, but the power it exerted was completely beyond Lin's expectation. It was more than powerful, it was simply nature-defying. This Taoism was inherited from the Starry Sky fishing map, and there were only 3 moves in total. But each move contained all phenomena and infinite mysteries. It was a longevity Taoism that was enough to shock both ancient and modern times. Buzz, in the distance, there were more six-winged blood mosquitoes rushing over. The reason why these creatures were difficult to deal with was that they were not afraid of death. They formed groups and couldn't be killed, which was very troublesome. Seeing this, Lin Sun put his fingers together again. Unlike before, the might contained within this finger strike was all-powerful and boundlessly powerful, and it was all-powerful and overbearing. Unsurprisingly, all the six-winged blood mosquitoes that rushed over were wiped out. Last time, I used the law of fire. This time, I used the law of water. Although the momentum is different, there is no obvious difference in power. However, the void-breaking finger of divination is infinite. I've only comprehended a little bit of it. With the improvement of my comprehension in the future, its power should be stronger and stronger. but it consumes too much power. Lin Sun felt helpless. Just 2 fingers consumed 1/3 of his power. Although this Taoism was extremely powerful, its consumption was also amazing. Obviously, it couldn't be used in a long battle. Perhaps, only when my cultivation is promoted to a certain level, can I operate this Taoism with ease and give full play to its power. Lin Sun pondered. In 3 days, his cultivation was promoted to the middle level of King Tao, and he comprehended a trace of the true meaning of the instant of spring and autumn, which undoubtedly made Lin Sun's combat power a step forward. However, the consumption was also quite amazing. In 3 days, he consumed as many as 5 king medicines just for cultivation. This was the peak king realm, with unparalleled combat power, but the resources needed for cultivation were far more than those of the same generation. However, Lin Sun's Taoism was obviously different from other peak king realms, and the resources needed for cultivation were more than those of the same generation. Fortunately, he had slaughtered the territory of Golden Crow and other major forces before and gained a lot of spoils of war, so he didn't have to worry about it at all. 7 days later, Lin Sun made another breakthrough. Chapter 12-14. Mu. In the primitive forest, a vast dragon roar came out of Lin Sun's body, rumbling and spreading. The nearby void suddenly became chaotic and whined, as if it couldn't bear such a breath. The ancient trees exploded one after another, turning into sawdust that scattered everywhere. In the distance, a golden-horned lizard lurking in the lush grass suddenly exploded, and a rain of blood fell. At the same time, Lin Sun opened his eyes. In his body, a vivid dragon was lingering around the Tao seed, swallowing the light of water and fire. 7 days, I finally broke through the Tao of the true dragon to the level of Tao. Lin Sun exhaled a long breath. With a thought in his mind, 9 golden words, tribulation, emerged and turned into the phantoms of 9 kinds of divine beasts. Ice Dragon, Fushi, Bishi, Bishi, Chaofeng, Yazi, Chunyo, Puleo, and Baxia. Each of the divine beasts was vivid and full of spirituality. They mastered ice beads, armors, cauldrons, seals, bows, zither, and other treasures. Waves of true dragon chi emanated from the bodies of these divine beasts, filling the void. Within a radius of thousands of meters, all the creatures lying dormant were trembling all over at this moment. They were completely deterred and crawled on the ground, shivering. The power of the 9 transformations of the true dragon was obviously completely different from that of other Tao laws. It had more spirituality and momentum. In short, the 9 transformations of the true dragon and the 9 transformations of the true dragon were complementary to each other. Before long, Lin Sun restrained his breath and dispersed the momentum around him, falling into thought. Now, only the star obliteration devouring way and the immortality way hadn't transformed into Tao laws, but it wouldn't be long before they broke through. Immediately, Lin Sun thought of one thing. The yin and yang lotus is a magical medicine. If I swallow it now, although I can master the Tao of yin and yang, it will waste the efficacy for no reason. He decided that he would only take the medicine when he needed it. Whoosh! Without any delay, Lin Sun stood up and disappeared the next moment. Today was the appointed time with Ji Xingyao. On a low hill, Ji Xingyao's graceful figure stood on top of it, the green grass swaying in the wind. She was dressed in white, and her fine black hair danced in the wind. She looked like a fairy, elegant and refined. Miss Ji. Lin Sun came and greeted him with a smile. When are we leaving? Wait a moment. There's another group of people who will be moving with us, Ji Xingyao said casually. Who? Lin Sun was stunned. The successor of the Saint Hidden Ground's profound Nether Divine Palace. Their leader is an extremely powerful ancient freak called Qi Yunfeng. He was born with the talent of nether bone silver blood, and in the ancient times, he was already a big shot amongst the top figures. His fighting strength is extremely terrifying. Ji Xingyao explained swiftly. The reason we're working together with them is because they possess an incomplete map related to the Nether Blood Well. Moreover, Chi Yunfeng has a close relationship with the ancient freak of my profound Sikh sword school, Mo Tianhe. So, we don't have to worry about any risks from working together with them. Lin Sun nodded. He had no objection to this. Ji Xingyao and the others were here to search for opportunities, while he was here to save Old Toad. There was no conflict of interest. Of course, if there was a conflict during the action, Lin Sun was not afraid. By the way, I have a treasure that can change your appearance and temperament. In this way, no one will be able to see through your identity, Ji Xingyao said hesitantly. Lin Sun understood her concern. 10 days ago, he had just beaten Mo Tianhe violently. If they acted together, there would inevitably be friction. Don't bother. As Lin Sun said, he ran the formless skill. His appearance and temperament suddenly changed into an ordinary young man with a calm temperament. Ji Xingyao was stunned. She looked Lin Sun up and down and said with a smile, "Now I feel much more pleasing to the eye." Lin Sun said grumpily, "I didn't like you before?" Ji Xingyao nodded seriously. "You used to be like a scoundrel, shameless and awkward." As she said, she couldn't help bursting into laughter. Her beautiful face looked exceptionally bright and brilliant in the sky. Lin Sun rolled his eyes and said, "You and I are the same. You used to be like a peacock, with eyes on the top and nostrils in the sky. You were so arrogant." Ji Xingyao widened her eyes and gnashed her teeth in anger. When she was about to say something, Lin Sun said directly, "Stop it. Someone is coming." Suddenly, Ji Xingyao's face froze. She gave a cold snort and then returned to her former beautiful and aloof fairy temperament. "Junior sister Ji, sorry to keep you waiting." In the sky, a group of figures came through the air, led by a young man in a crane cloak. He was Mo Tianhe, the ancient freak of Xianwen Sword House. Ji Xingyao nodded and looked at the man beside Mo Tianhe. "Junior sister Ji, this is Taoism Fellow from Chaoyun Peak. As early as the ancient times, we entered the Absolute Summit domain together. We are very close," Mo Tianhe introduced with a smile. This was a cold-looking man, wearing a wide-sleeved black robe and a star crown. He was dignified and slender, and his skin was as white as jade. He stood there casually, like a noble son of heaven, showing a graceful and reserved temperament. Under the seemingly restrained appearance, there was a kind of extreme conceit. In particular, there were 4 strong people following him, 2 men and 2 women, all of whom were extremely extraordinary, like dragons and phoenixes among men. But at this time, they surrounded him like stars surrounding the moon, which showed his extraordinary origin and foundation. "Greetings, fellow practitioner," Ji Xingyao said. It was also at this time that Chao Yunfeng nodded slightly. He looked at Ji Xingyao with his purple eyes and said, "It's really amazing that there is such a peerless woman as Fairy Ji in this generation." "You flatter me." Ji Xingyao was calm and indifferent. This surprised Chao Yunfeng a little, and he couldn't help but look at Ji Xingyao. "Junior sister Ji, who is this friend?" Mo Tianhe looked at Lin Sun and couldn't help frowning after looking at him for a while. "I mentioned him to you before." When Ji Xingyao said this, Lin Sun interrupted with a smile, "My name is Jin Di." "Greetings, fellow practitioners." Ji Xingyao breathed a sigh of relief. She almost forgot to give Lin Sun a name before. Fortunately, this guy was quick-witted. "Jin Di?" Mo Tianhe was suspicious. He thought to himself, when did Ji Xingyao know such a friend? Jin Di. Does it mean unique? What an arrogant name. Chao Yunfeng sneered and then looked Lin Sun up and down. Suddenly, he said to Ji Xingyao, "Fairy Ji, you know that we are going to the forbidden land of sticks this time, which is the most dangerous place. If someone drags us down, our whole operation will be affected. In other words, would your friend be able to do it?" Ji Xingyao sneered in her heart. "If you knew the identity of this guy, would you still dare to question him like this?" Although she thought so, she said, "Don't worry. Fellow practitioner Jean is extremely powerful. He will never affect our operation. There's no proof. This operation is of great importance. If you want your friend to join us, you can let him pass me first. Suddenly, a strong man behind Chi Yunfeng opened his mouth. He was a young man with long and narrow cheeks and cold eyes. He stared at Lin Sun with an aggressive and arrogant look. Chow Yunfeng smiled and did not stop him. Mo Tianhe also chose to look on coldly. He was still suspicious about the origin of Jin Di. Moreover, there was a bold idea in his heart that the so-called Jin Di was fake and his real identity was very likely to be Lin Sun. 10 days ago, Lin Sun appeared and talked with Ji Xingyao. There was obviously something wrong with the relationship between them. In addition, Ji Xingyao had never mentioned that she had such a friend since she came to the Absolute Summit domain, which made Mo Tianhe suspicious. As long as he dares to take action, I can definitely see through his identity. Mo Tianhe thought in his heart. He had been defeated by Lin Sun, so he had long remembered Lin Sun's breath. Once he took action, no matter how well he disguised himself, he would be seen through. Seeing this, Ji Xingyao couldn't help but feel a little angry. Lin Sun was a powerful helper she had invited, but these guys treated him like this. This was not only questioning Lin Sun, but also her decision. However, before she could speak, Lin Sun smiled and said, "You have to pay the price for provoking me. Are you sure you want to do this?" Chow Yunfeng was stunned and then sneered. He didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. The strong man was called Zhan Luxiu. He was also a peerless king. Although he was not an ancient freak, he was a peerless genius from the Xianming Immortal Mansion. Among his peers, no one dared to talk to him like this. The others also laughed with a playful look on their faces. They thought to themselves, where did Fairy Ji find such an arrogant disciple? Not only his name, but also his behavior was very arrogant, which made people laugh. Only Mo Tianhe became more and more suspicious. His heart was pounding. His tone was obviously the same as Demon God Lin's style. They were both so unscrupulous and bold. Was it really him? Mo Tianhe's eyes flickered. Zhan Luxiu also smiled, but his smile was very cold. He couldn't help but look at Chow Yunfeng. Chow Yunfeng nodded and said, "Don't go too far. After all, he is Fairy Ji's friend. Don't be cruel." Zhan Luxiu was immediately relieved. He fixed his sharp eyes on Lin Sun and said, "As long as you can block 10 moves from me, you pass." None of them noticed that although Ji Xingyao looked calm at the moment, there was a trace of imperceptible pity and helplessness in her eyes. Why bother to be abused? She thought to herself. No need for 10 moves. 1 blow is enough. Lin Sun still smiled, but there was a touch of coldness in his black eyes. He knew that if he didn't frighten Zhan Luxiu, he would definitely not be treated well in the next action. Arrogant! Zhan Luxiu sneered, exuding a frightening power of the King realm. Arrogant? Wrong. That's because you know nothing about power. At this time, Lin Sun had already attacked. He stepped forward and simply pressed his finger. Chapter 12:15. Mu. At the moment when Lin Sun attacked, everyone had a feeling that it was not a person, but a dormant dragon coming out of the abyss at this moment. As Lin Sun pressed his finger, Zhan Luxiu felt it most strongly, as if he was in the spring and autumn of eternity. His body and mind were impacted by a vast momentum. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he felt a stinging pain in his eyes, as if he was not facing a simple finger, but the momentum of eternity. He let out an angry roar. The battle strength around his body surged as he circulated his strength to the limit to block. However, the feeling it gave off was like a praying mantis, fearlessly resisting the wheel of an eternal spring and autumn. It seemed extremely small. Bang! Zhan Luxiu was directly shaken out, and his body was out of control like a kite with a broken string. It took a long time to describe, but in fact, it happened in an instant. Although Si Yunfeng noticed that something was wrong, it was too late to stop it. Boom! Thousands of meters away, a hill was smashed by Jean Lucio's body. Gravel flew everywhere, and smoke and dust filled the air. Everyone was stunned, and the scene was strangely silent. Jean Lucio, the peerless genius of Xianming Palace, had stepped into the King realm not long ago. But now, he was directly defeated by Lin Sun's finger. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Ahem! In the distance, Jean Lucio climbed up from the ground with a dirty face. His hair was disheveled, and he was coughing up blood. Qi Yunfeng and the others felt uncomfortable when they saw this, and their hearts were in turmoil. This Jean D. Could it be that he's really an expert that's concealing his strength? Come again! Jean Lucio shouted and rushed at Lin Sun with a murderous look. His cheeks were livid, and he was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He thought he was careless. Can't afford to lose? Lin Sun asked. As he spoke, his figure flashed, and he had already rushed up. Stop! Si Yunfeng had no time to think and shouted to stop Lin Sun. But it was too late. With a bang, Jean Lucio was hit again, and he was still suppressed by Lin Sun's finger. Boom! On the ground, a man-shaped pit was smashed by Jean Lucio. Smoke and dust billowed, and the ground was shaking as if there was an earthquake. Even Ji Xingyao couldn't bear to watch. At this moment, Lin Sun had returned to his original place. He looked calm and composed, as if it wasn't him who attacked just now. However, when they looked at him again, the gazes of Qi Yunfeng and the others had changed. There was a trace of anger, bewilderment, and fear. At this point, anyone could discern that Jean D's combat strength was formidable, and he was entirely capable of crushing Jean Lucio. Emo Tianhe's face was cloudy and uncertain. Just now, he had been staring at Lin Sun closely, but he was surprised to find that the guy in front of him was more powerful and abnormal than the demon Lin he knew. Furthermore, the aura he used in battle was completely different from Fiend Celestial Lin's. The battle Dao Dharma he used was completely different. Could it be that he really isn't Demon God Lin? But since he's so powerful, he shouldn't be a nobody. Emo Tianhe couldn't figure it out. Again. In the distance, Jean Lucio was like an enraged madman, rushing over again. Enough! Qi Yunfeng's face darkened and he scolded, which made Jean Lucio's face turn pale. Finally, he stopped. Then, Qi Yunfeng looked at Lin Sun and his tone became polite. If I'm not mistaken, the power of the great way you displayed should be related to the bloodline of the true dragon, right? Lin Sun was stunned and said, yes. Hearing this, the others showed a look of enlightenment, and they looked at Lin Sun with more and more different eyes. Related to the bloodline of the true dragon? This was not simple at all. The bloodline of the true dragon? Emo Tianhe felt completely confused. Only Ji Xingyao, who knew Lin Sun's identity, almost couldn't help laughing. If Demon God Lin came from the bloodline of the true dragon, which big force dared to bully him in the ancient Desolation realm? Ha ha ha, it's undoubtedly a blessing for us to have such a master like Brother Jean join us in this action. Qi Yunfeng laughed and looked very enthusiastic. He changed his attitude towards Lin Sun. We didn't recognize you just now. Please forgive us, Brother Jean. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, you're too polite. He was a little vigilant in his heart. In his opinion, Qi Yunfeng was not simple. He was able to rise and fall at the right time. If he became an enemy, he would definitely be a formidable opponent. No time to lose. Let's go. Ji Xingyao said. Yes, we must hurry up. As far as I know, there are other forces planning to go to the Forbidden Land of Styx this time. Qi Yunfeng looked serious. We don't need to pay attention to ordinary forces, but there are two forces that we should pay attention to. Who? Emo Tianhe couldn't help asking. One is the Wutian sect, and the other is the bloodline of the Golden Crow. Qi Yunfeng said. Hearing the three words Wutian sect, all the people present were shocked. It was a big sect in the Saint Hermit land with an unimaginably terrifying foundation. Many people couldn't help laughing when they heard the name of the Golden Crow. When the Golden Crow was in the distant Fire Realm, its seventh prince, Wu Lingfei, was killed by demon god Lin. Not long ago, the Flying Star Mountain, where they lived, was massacred by demon god Lin. Their strength has been greatly weakened. How dare they covet the opportunities in the forbidden land of Styx? Aren't they courting death? Mo Tianhe sneered. Qi Yunfeng shook his head and reminded, don't underestimate the strength of the Golden Crow. In ancient times, no one dared to provoke the Sunset Tang Valley where the Golden Crow lived. Even the sages didn't dare to provoke them easily. At present, they are indeed badly hurt by demon god Lin, but it's not a serious injury. As far as I know, Wu Lingdao, the 13th prince of the Golden Crow, who was practicing in the Kanshui realm, has come to the distant Fire Realm after learning of the encounter of Wu Lingfei and Wu Lingfeng. He swore to kill demon god Lin. Hearing this, an imperceptible coldness flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. When he was in the distant Fire Realm, he had heard that there were 3 powerful figures of the Golden Crow who entered the Absolute Land this time. They were the 7th Prince Wu Lingfei, the 9th Prince Wu Lingfeng, and the 13th Prince Wu Lingdao. This Wu Lingdao is a ruthless character. Don't look down on his low ranking. His combat ability is the best amongst his brothers, and he is regarded as the little king of war of the Golden Crow clan. In ancient times, he had entered the apex domain, and the number of people who died at his hands was not small. Qi Yunfeng's eyebrows flashed with a trace of seriousness. Obviously, he also had a trace of fear for Wu Lingdao. Now, he has become a top figure. If he participates in the action of entering the forbidden land of Styx, we must not be careless. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but be awestruck. While talking, they had already started to move and flew towards the forbidden land of Styx. Along the way, there was no disturbance. Until they entered the primitive forest, they slowed down and became careful. This was already the periphery of the forbidden land of Styx. However, Lin Sun clearly felt that, different from a few days ago, the strange aura permeating the primitive forest was obviously much less. It was even impossible to detect its existence without careful perception. Buzzing, before long, a group of 6-winged blood mosquitoes rushed out, which shocked everyone. Be careful, everyone. These things are extremely vicious and not afraid of death. Go in groups and don't get entangled with them. Qi Yunfeng took a deep breath and reminded everyone. However, to their astonishment, these 6-winged blood mosquitoes seemed to be frightened after rushing out. Before they got close, they turned around and fled, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Fled? Even Qi Yunfeng was a little dizzy. Maybe they are frightened by us. After all, the strength of our group is enough to run amok in the distant Fire Realm. Mo Tianhe said proudly. Only Lin Sun smiled and said nothing. He wouldn't say that these 6-winged blood mosquitoes were not stupid without intelligence. They were indeed fearless, but they were also frightened by the killing. In the past 10 days, no less than thousands of 6-winged blood mosquitoes died in his hands, so as soon as he appeared, these fierce creatures would flee in panic. Is it your doing? Ji Xingyao asked Lin Sun doubtfully. Lin Sun remained calm and said, I think what your senior brother Mo said is right. Ji Xingyao rolled her eyes at him. Do you think I will believe it? Lin Sun said with a smile, Well, I admit that they are afraid of me. I don't believe you. Ji Xingyao sneered with a look of, don't brag. Lin Sun was speechless for a while. Women were really inexplicable. Whether it was true or false, they didn't believe anything but their own judgment. On the way, the atmosphere gradually became gloomy. Here, ancient trees covered the sky, it was dark and damp, and there were many fierce creatures and poisonous insects rarely seen in the outside world, which was extremely creepy. No one dared to take it lightly. But the strange thing was that all along the way, they actually encountered no danger, and they didn't encounter any battle or obstruction at all. Even if they encountered some terrible fierce creatures, they would turn around and flee as soon as they appeared, as if they were stimulated and frightened, wishing their parents had given them 2 more legs. Just like earlier, a 300 m long azure scale python that was thick like a bucket and possessed an extremely terrifying aura caused Qi Yunfeng and the others to seem as if they were facing a great enemy, and their bodies tensed up as they prepared to fight a fierce battle. Who would have thought that as soon as the python appeared, it would let out an anguished wail and flee so quickly that it crashed into countless ancient trees. This caused Si Yunfeng and the others to be stunned speechless. "Why do I feel that the python seems to be afraid of you?" Ji Xingyao couldn't help asking again. "A few days ago, I caught it, chopped a piece of its meat and cooked a pot of snake soup, but the taste was too bad. There was a fishy smell that couldn't be removed," Lin Sun said casually. "Bragging again?" Ji Xingyao glared at him. Lin Sun was helpless. He swore to God that he absolutely didn't lie, but Ji Xingyao didn't believe him. Who could he blame? "Be careful, everyone. The forbidden land of sticks is in front of us. That place is extremely strange and ominous. You must not take it lightly," Si Yunfeng reminded in front of them. Lin Sun looked up and saw a bloody world at the end of the primitive mountain forest, which was dazzling. P.S. The interactive activity last night was extremely popular. Thank you for your active participation. As for the prizes, because it was the weekend, the staff of Zongheng would count them after work next week and then distribute them to everyone. Chapter 12:16. The Forbidden Land of Sticks was a frightening name. However, no one could say for sure just how terrifying this place was. It was not only because this place was extremely vast and hid too many strange and ominous dangers, but also because most of the strong who entered this place never came back. At this time, what appeared in front of Lin Sun and the others was a bloody world. As far as the eye could see, the earth seemed to be soaked in the blood of demons, glowing with dazzling bloody light. In the void, the bloody wind whistled like a mist covering the sky and the sun. Vaguely, it could be seen that there were mountains rising and falling in the bloody mist, like behemoths dormant in the bloody world, waiting to devour people. The most amazing thing was that there were 9 bloody suns in the sky. The bloody suns were not dazzling. They were distributed in different areas of the sky, rotating slowly as if they were dyed red by endless blood, which was shocking. With just a glance, Lin Sun felt an unspeakable fierce and gloomy atmosphere coming to his face, which made him feel depressed both physically and mentally. His black eyes suddenly narrowed slightly, and his heart was in awe. Seeing Si Yunfeng, Mo Tianhe and others, their faces also changed slightly, and they became alert as if they were facing a formidable enemy. From now on, we are bound to encounter unexpected strange and ominous things on the way. You must not be careless. Si Yunfeng took a deep breath and exhorted everyone. "I'll lead the way." Ji Xingyao stepped forward, and the aura around her suddenly flowed. Buzz. Above her head, a broken hand bone appeared, which was as white as jade and emitted circles of obscure and enchanting white light. Whoosh! The hand bone seemed to come to life. As its knuckles pointed in the void, a white light suddenly rushed out of the void and extended to the distance. It was like a path. Then, everyone followed Ji Xingyao and went to the distance. This is a piece of remnant bone of a saint, which was refined into divine light guide by the ancestors of Xianwen Sword House. With it, you can seek luck and avoid misfortune. Last time I entered the divine hell blood well, I relied on this treasure to guide me. On the way, Ji Xingyao transmitted her voice to Lin Sun. Without the guidance of such a treasure, anyone who enters the forbidden land of sticks will get lost in it. Lin Sun nodded, indicating that he understood. Bloody mist suffused the surroundings all along the way, causing the heavens and the earth to be filled with a terrifying, fiendish, and vicious aura. Gales whistled in the surroundings like the wailing of fiend gods, and it caused one's hairs to stand on end. Along the way, whether it was Lin Sun or others, they had to use all their strength to offset the omnipresent oppressive breath. Crack! Not long after, a cracking sound came from under Mo Tianhe's feet, which was especially ear-piercing in this silent atmosphere. Everyone jumped in fright and looked over. There was a blood-red skull on the ground, but it had already been crushed. Its empty eye sockets looked up at the sky, and its mouth was split open as if it was laughing at them. What bad luck! Mo Tianhe's face darkened. He kicked the skull away with a bang. Who would have thought that this broken skull would suddenly transform in midair, and transform into a bloody skeleton crow, and it let out a sharp cackle. That voice was extremely ear-piercing, and it tore through the silence of the world. This strange scene caused everyone to be shocked. Oh, this ghost crow seems to be calling for something. A cold light flashed in Qi Yunfeng's eyes. A black flying sword suddenly flew out of his palm and flew across the sky like a waterfall. Bang! The bloody skeleton crow's body exploded and turned into wisps of blood mist. Obviously, it was not a real living thing. Let's go! Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly shrank as he sensed that something was wrong. He grabbed Ji Xingyao's arm and rushed forward. Qi Yunfeng and others were stunned at first, and then their faces suddenly changed. They followed closely. Rumble! Just as they left, the ground where they were originally at cracked open, and bloody skeletons rushed out. Their bodies were all in tatters. But the strange thing was that their bones were constantly reassembling, and blood was gurgling on their bodies. In their empty eye sockets, a pair of bloody flames were burning, which was extremely horrifying. As far as the eye could see, tens of thousands of bloody holes broke out of the ground, submerging the area like a ghost town. Lin Sun and others gasped. If they hadn't escaped in time, they would have been drowned in the army of bloody skeletons. Clatter! A bloody skeleton shaped like an ancient fierce beast, Qiongqi, shook its body and grew to a height of tens of thousands of meters. It stretched out its thick white bone arm and slapped Lin Sun and others fiercely. In an instant, the void collapsed, an endless evil spirit rushed out with this blow, which was much more terrifying than the attack of a king of Extinction Realm expert. Go! Without hesitation, Lin Sun and others rushed forward again. Boom! Behind them, the earth cracked, and a bottomless ravine was abruptly formed by the blow. At the same time, bloody skeletons rushed out like a tide and spread to Lin Sun and others at an extremely fast speed. Ah! Suddenly, one of the women following behind Chai Yunfeng screamed. Her but was bitten by a bloody skull. She was also a King of Extinction Realm expert, but she couldn't avoid this blow. Immediately, many people's faces changed. What on earth were these skeletons? How could they be so strange? Bang! Lin Sun was extremely decisive. He suddenly stepped forward and smashed the skull with a slap. The woman let out another scream and jumped up like a frightened rabbit. Her pretty face was full of shame and annoyance, and she glared at Lin Sun fiercely. It turned out that when Lin Sun smashed the skull, his palm also fell on her butt, which was burning hot. You! The woman gritted her teeth. Lin Sun didn't care about this. There was a strand of strange bloody light wrapped around his fingertip. It was extremely vicious and strange. It tore his skin and drilled into his body. He couldn't get rid of it. This is the blood god, an extremely terrible and strange power. It can pollute people's qi and blood and corrupt people's divine soul. King Realm experts will suffer calamity if they're tainted by it. Ji Xingyao's heart tightened, and a touch of worry appeared on her pretty face. The others were also shocked. Even the woman who was originally ashamed and angry stopped screaming at this moment. Let's get out of here first. Lin Sun, on the other hand, was extremely calm. While urging his strength to resist the blood god, he rushed forward. Rumble! Behind him, the skeleton army was hot on his heels, covering the sky and covering the earth. In this blood-red world, it was exceptionally terrifying. It was not until a quarter of an hour later that all this gradually disappeared. What appeared in front of Lin Sun and the others was a huge river filled with bloody mist. The river had long dried up, but it was filled with bloody mist. It was so vast that they couldn't see where the other side was. Buzz at the same time, the deity guide above Ji Xingyao's head was buzzing and spinning, and she couldn't tell the direction anymore. Ji Xingyao looked around and her heart sank. She said, "We just ran for our lives and went in the wrong direction. Now maybe we're lost." The others' faces also became gloomy. They had just entered the forbidden land of sticks for less than 2 hours, and such an accident happened, which made them all feel a little bad. "How are you?" Ji Xingyao looked at Lin Sun with a touch of worry on her face. The others also looked at Lin Sun. At this time, Lin Sun's face was a little pale. In his body, a strand of blood god was running around. Wherever it passed, the breath it released was corroding his qi and blood little by little. No matter how he used the devouring star way, he couldn't resolve it. "Sorry, if it weren't for me just now." The woman who had been bitten on the hip felt a little guilty. Although she was injured, the blood god didn't invade her body. Instead, Lin Sun, who had saved her, was affected. "Don't feel guilty, Miss Yin Shui. It's not your fault." Lin Sun took a deep breath and said, "Can you wait for a moment and let me meditate?" The others naturally agreed. Now that they were all lost, all actions were in vain before they were sure of the direction. Without hesitation, Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the ground. The others were discussing whether or not they should cross the dried-up riverbed covered in blood mist. According to Ji Xingyao, the blood god was an extremely strange and ominous power that had something to do with the legendary river Styx. Ordinary King Realm strongmen couldn't resolve it, and their souls would be corroded and turned into a rotten bloody corpse. It could be imagined how vicious and terrible this power was. Lin Sun tried to resolve it with his own power, but it didn't work at all. Even his spiritual awareness couldn't lock the trace of the blood god. Seeing that half of his qi and blood had been corroded, even Lin Sun couldn't help but feel anxious. What should he do? He had tried many methods, but none of them worked. Tut! Later, Lin Sun was forced to run the power of the Dharma scripture and display the Ksitigarbha salvation mantra. The Tao seed in his body glowed and produced a grand Buddhist chant. At the same time, the pure and magnificent black Buddha light flowed and condensed into a black lotus seat. This lotus seat was called Guide, which was derived from the core mystery of the Ksitigarbha salvation mantra. It could guide ghosts and gods and suppress evil spirit. Originally, this method was one of the supreme mysteries of the earthly scripture temple. But after the holy monk Du Ji's interpretation, it had more mysterious power. On the black lotus seat, there was a wisp of black phoenix divine flame. The reason why Lin Sun used this method was that he was forced to use it as a last resort. Unexpectedly, as soon as this method was used, an incredible scene appeared. The wisp of blood god suddenly stopped moving, and then it was drawn into the black lotus platform as if it was being pulled. Boom! With bursts of Buddhist chant, the blood god suddenly burned in the Buddha light and let out a shrill scream. It could be clearly seen that wisps of blood mist were incinerated and wiped out. Finally, only a fingernail-sized shadow fell on the black lotus seat. "Thank you for awakening me from the endless oblivion. Now I can be free." A relieved voice sounded with a kind of gratitude. Immediately, the wisp of shadow disappeared. Chapter 12:17. Source of Natal Soul. In an instant, Lin Sun recognized that the crystal-clear power was an incomparably pure spiritual power. As far as Lin Sun knew, only after the death of a saint, his primordial spirit would be preserved as the purest energy, which would never be extinguished. It was like the Buddha's sarira after the death of the Buddha. This kind of power was also called Source of Natal Soul, which belonged to the category of holy objects. It was extremely rare and invaluable. Refining it was enough to make a practitioner's spiritual power have an amazing improvement, and there was no need to worry about any drawbacks at all. Especially for the strong in the king realm, the soul was like a lamp. The stronger the soul, the brighter it was, the more beneficial it was for the exploration of longevity. I didn't expect that the blood god was born from the source of natal soul after the death of a saint. Lin Sun was shocked. Everything that had happened before was truly too dangerous. If he hadn't run the Ksitigarbha salvation mantra in time, it was very likely that his blood, chi and soul would have been corroded by the blood god. After this incident, Lin Sun was completely sure that the Buddhist power inherited from the Ksitigarbha temple had a natural restraining effect on the strange power contained in the blood god. Clatter as Lin Sun's mind moved, the source of natal soul was suddenly refined and converged into his soul like a stream of water. Suddenly, Lin Sun only felt that his spirit was refreshed as if he was bathing in the holy rain spring. His spiritual cultivation actually improved a lot in just a few breaths. There was a faint sign of a breakthrough. Now, his spiritual cultivation was at the level of seeing the world, one of the three realms of divine flower gathering in one's head. The next realm was seeing the future. If he broke through, he could have a premonition and comprehend a trace of karma and luck in the dark. He could even see the good or bad luck on the road of cultivation in the future. Originally, Lin Sun estimated that it would take at least more than 3 years to break through the level of his spiritual cultivation. That was because the power of one's spirit was extremely mysterious. It was extremely difficult to increase one's spirit. For example, Lin Sun had practiced meditating magic. As early as the beginning of cultivation, his spiritual power was much stronger than that of the strong in the same realm. But until now, his spiritual power was still at the level of divine flower gathering in one's head. Even so, it was far beyond that of his peers. It could be imagined from this how difficult it was to cultivate the soul. Yet now, merely refining and absorbing a strand of the soul source left behind by a saint had caused the strength of his soul to improve greatly, and this sort of improvement could be said to be world-shocking. Fairy G, this fellow Taoist Jin, seems to possess the inheritance of the great Earth Treasury Temple? When Lin Sun was cultivating, his whole body was covered with Buddha's light, and he looked solemn. There was a faint sound of chanting, which immediately attracted the attention of Qi Yunfeng and others. Ji Xingyao replied vaguely. She was also very shocked by this and naturally couldn't give an explanation. He has the power related to the bloodline of the true dragon, and now he is involved with the great Earth Treasury Temple. This guy, where did this monster come from? Mo Tianhe felt dizzy. Before, he had always suspected that this Jin Di was Lin Sun, but now he also felt confused and uncertain. I heard that an ancient freak called Ancient Buddha came out of the great Earth Treasury Temple. His origin is mysterious, and his combat power is also unfathomable. So far, no one has seen his true face. If Fairy Ji didn't know fellow Taoist Jin, I would almost suspect that he is the legendary Ancient Buddha. Qi Yunfeng's eyes flickered. Until now, he still couldn't figure out Lin Sun's background, which made him more and more afraid to underestimate Lin Sun. Fellow Taoist Jin is chivalrous and righteous. No matter where he comes from, he will definitely not harm us. Yin Shui bit her cherry lips and said in a low voice. Everyone's expression became a little strange. They knew that Lin Sun had saved Yin Shui once before, which made her feel grateful. At this moment, Lin Sun stood up, swept away his previous sleepiness, and became energetic. Everyone's eyes lit up. They were keenly aware that under Lin Sun's seemingly ordinary appearance, there was a kind of ethereal temperament. Moreover, in the face of his deep and calm eyes, everyone felt a kind of invisible pressure. This made them all realize that after Lin Sun solved the blood god this time, it was very likely to be a blessing in disguise and get some benefits. Even Qi Yunfeng couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This was an unexpected opportunity that couldn't be forced. The current area is full of extremely strange power. We can't judge the direction, so we plan to cross this river. Do you think it's feasible? Ji Xingyao asked. Lin Sun's black eyes swept the distance and saw the bloody mist rolling and filling the river. He couldn't see the other side of the river. The unknown was the most dangerous. The bloody mist river in front of them seemed calm, but who knew how many dangers were hidden in it? But there was no turning back, because behind them, there was an endless army of skeletons. Then let's go. Lin Sun nodded. Qi Yunfeng immediately withdrew a golden treasured vessel, and it carried everyone as it slowly sailed into the sky above the river that was suffused with blood mist. Suddenly, everyone noticed that entering the sky above the river was like coming to a sea of bloody clouds. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing but bloody mist. Even the 9 bloody suns in the sky were gone. Clatter, the treasure boat moved forward in the bloody mist, looking very small, like a lonely boat in the ocean at night. What made everyone more solemn was that the rolling bloody mist filled the sky and the earth. It was very easy to get lost in it. Lin Sun released his spiritual awareness, but was surprised to find that the power of the bloody mist was so strange that it could greatly hinder the detection of spiritual awareness. At most, he could only sense an area of 3,000 meters. In addition, it was quiet all the way. Only the sound of airflow fluctuations when the treasure boat passed through the bloody mist could be heard. Not long after, the treasure boat suddenly stopped. Ji Xingyao was about to speak, but Lin Sun covered her mouth and looked into the distance like lightning. Almost at the same time, Qi Yunfeng and others also opened their eyes wide in horror. In the bloody mist ahead, broken corpses appeared, each of which emitted a bloody light, which was ferocious and terrible. Some of them had their heads broken, some had their stomachs cut open, and some had lost their limbs. If one looked carefully, there were humans and creatures of other clans. But without exception, all of them were covered in blood, and their eyes were empty and lifeless. Obviously, only corpses remained. Some carried broken flags, some drove ancient broken chariots, and they converged into a formidable army that charged into the depths of the bloody mist without looking back. Inexplicably, everyone felt a wave of shock in their hearts, and then they felt a wave of sorrow while their chests seemed to be blocked. They died countless years ago and only left behind broken corpses, but they still transformed into a formidable army that charged forward. Exactly how great were their lingering thoughts that made them unwilling to be silent and peaceful even after death? Who were their opponents? Lin Sun and the others held their breaths in concentration as they watched silently, and their expressions changed indeterminately. What they saw in front of them was too strange and shocking, and it caused them to suspect that this was once an ancient battlefield, and a world-shocking war had erupted here an unknown time ago. It didn't take long for this strange army to disappear in the bloody mist. But before Lin Sun and the others could continue to move forward, a deafening sound of fighting rang out, and then a wave of terrifying power surged in the bloody mist. The killing intent and power fluctuations made Lin Sun and the others tremble in their hearts. Almost unanimously, they chose to drive the treasure ship to rush to the distance with all their strength. Rumble in the depths of the bloody mist, the fierce battle raged like thunder and wind, resounding in all directions, accompanied by the roar of gods and demons, which made people shudder with fear and feel extremely depressed. There must have been a great divine battle here. Until they escaped from this area, Qi Yunfeng spoke in a deep voice, and his expression was extremely solemn. Others nodded, because what they saw just now made them feel a fatal threat, and they didn't dare to imagine how miserable their fate would be if they were involved in such a battle. Those corpses were definitely all great figures who could rule the world when they were alive. However, for some unknown reason, they all died here. Moreover, this is merely a region within the Styx forbidden area. I really do not dare to imagine just how many secrets are hidden within this absolute region. Emo Tianhe sighed with emotion. Others were also quite touched. The absolute domain was divided into 3,000 realms and the upper 9 realms. It was boundless and only appeared several times in ancient times. As for its origin, no one could say anything about it. not to mention how many secrets it was hiding. Now, all of them had the power of the peerless king realm, and they could be regarded as giants in the outside world. But when they arrived at such a fierce place, they still felt incomparably small and pale. They continued to move forward, and the deafening sound of fighting gradually disappeared. However, when they had just recovered from the shock, another strange thing happened. In the bloody mist in the distance, there was a small hill made of skeletons, and the gurgling blood and bloody mist flowed from the dense skeletons. On the top of the hill, a graceful figure was sitting there, wearing a blood-stained dress. She was combing her long hair with her hands, as if she was dressing up in front of the river. However, what caused everyone's hearts to turn cold was the fact that there was nothing above her neck. There was no head. Then, everyone noticed that the headless figure in a bloody robe turned around and seemed to see them. Suddenly, they were all stiff, their scalps were numb, and their souls swayed as if they were about to fly out of their bodies. Tut! Lin Sun suddenly made a Zen sound with Pu Lao's roar. Suddenly, the Buddha's light spread, and a solemn and grand momentum filled the air. Everyone suddenly sobered up. When they looked back again, the headless figure in a bloody robe had turned around and was still combing her long hair gently. It was like a woman dressing up in front of the mirror and feeling sorry for herself. But it happened on the mountain of bones overflowing with blood, coupled with the headless figure. It gave people a kind of indescribable horror. At the same time, a faint and indistinct sigh resounded, and it revealed boundless loneliness. Chapter 12:18. A soft sigh that was like a whisper lingered in the hearts of everyone, causing their moods to sink. It was as if there was a fishbone stuck in their throats, causing them to hesitate to speak. Who was it? When he raised his head, he found the hill of white bones and the headless figure in a blood-red robe had already disappeared. They are all gone. Who will remember me? Inexplicably, Lin Sun recalled what the wisp of will left by Chen Linkong, the burning immortal, had said in the Fenshan Valley. When we left the ancient desolation realm, we were worried that it would be dangerous and there might be accidents. So, we left our mantle and fortune here in order to pass on the torch. Even if we died in a foreign land, our inheritance would not be cut off. These were the original words of Chen Linkong. Now, hearing the words of the woman who called herself Wu Yang, Lin Sun couldn't help but have a thought. Did they refer to the group of experts who left the ancient desolation realm with Chen Linkong? Wu Yang. According to the records of our Xianming Palace, there was a brilliant war emperor Wu Yang in the beginning of antiquity times. He fought in the 9 heavens and the 9 serenities. He dominated the world alone for a period of time. All his peers were overshadowed by him. Suddenly, Qi Yunfeng cried out involuntarily and spoke of an ancient secret. War Emperor Wu Yang. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that the headless woman in a blood-red robe was a war emperor in antiquity times? Those who could be called war emperors were all supreme figures who could dominate an era. A woman who could surpass her peers and dominate the world for a period of time was like a legend, which was enough to shock everyone. But why did she appear here? And her head is missing? Mo Tianhe gasped. Everyone was shocked. That's right, how could a battle emperor lose his head? No one knew. But after this incident, everyone became more aware of the strangeness and ominous nature of the forbidden land of Styx. The secret of its existence was just the tip of the iceberg, but it was already shocking. The treasure ship continued to move forward. Like a mystery that had been shrouded in the ancient times, the treasure ship was full of unknowns. No one noticed that a beautiful figure was sitting at the stern of the ship. She wore a dress that was tainted with blood, and she was faintly discernible within the blood-red mist, causing her to seem illusory. Lin Sun seemed to notice something and couldn't help looking back. However, he did not discover anything. The figure was clearly there, but in his field of vision, there was nothing. When they reached the other side, nothing unusual happened along the way. The bloody mist dispersed to reveal the sky and the 9 blood suns that hung above it once more, and everyone simultaneously heaved sighs of relief. In the distance, a group of mountains lay dormant on the ground, their peaks rising and falling. Without the slightest hesitation, all of them ascended the bank, and they were only too eager to leave this place that was filled with blood mist and mysteries as soon as possible. Before leaving, a faint sigh seemed to ring in Lin's ears. Lin suddenly turned around. The blood fog filled the air. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he had a strong feeling that there was a pair of eyes staring at him from the depths of the blood fog. However, if one tried to sense it carefully, they would only see the endlessly roiling blood mist. What happened? Ji Xingyao looked back at Lin Sun with some doubts. I'm fine. Lin Sun shook his head and followed the others. But soon, he felt a thump in his heart, because an old and dull copper ring was hanging on the hair near his ear. It was only the size of a copper coin, simple and unadorned. Lin Sun's back was drenched in cold sweat. The copper ring had been tied to the tip of his hair, but he had never noticed it. Who did this? If the person wanted to, couldn't he be killed silently? Lin Sun secretly glanced at Ji Xingyao and Si Yunfeng, only to find that they didn't notice it at all. Was it her? Inexplicably, Lin Sun thought of the figure in a blood-stained dress sitting on the mountain of white bones. Lin Sun held the copper ring in his hand and sensed it, but he only felt a bone-chilling coldness. Apart from that, he found nothing else. Before long, the divine light guide in Ji Xingyao's hand finally returned to normal, showing a new path. This made everyone feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. In the forbidden land of sticks, the most worrying thing was to get lost. Taoist Si, sorry to disturb you. Can you tell me about the Battle Emperor Wu Yang? Lin Sun stepped forward and asked. This startled the others, and they couldn't help but look at Si Yunfeng. They were also curious why a battle emperor, who had once been amazing for a period of time, would appear in that strange blood mist without a head. But to everyone's disappointment, Si Yunfeng knew very little. He only knew the name of Battle Emperor Wu Yang, but didn't know anything about his deeds or origins. But one thing is certain. Anyone who is worshipped as a battle emperor must have opened up a path of his own. Qi Yunfeng's gaze carried a wisp of reverence and admiration. Since the ancient times until now, there have been numerous paths towards the Tao that have been passed down in the world. If we trace their origins, then all of these paths towards the Tao were established by the great wisdom and willpower of our predecessors. Some paths of cultivation have been annihilated in the passage of time. Some paths of cultivation have survived to this day. For example, the Xianming Palace where we are, and the Xianwen Sword House where Fairy Ji and the others are, both have a legacy. This legacy is the path opened up by the ancestors of our sect. It can be said to be a blessing for all generations, so that we can benefit from it when we first set foot on the road of cultivation. We don't have to worry about going astray. Everyone deeply agreed. Lin Sun's expression was a little strange. He was shocked and proud, because his path of cultivation was also opened up by himself. It was unprecedented and not inferior to those of the sages of ancient times. What he lacked was nothing more than further exploration. If he could become a sage one day, he could completely establish his own orthodoxy, teach and impart knowledge to all living beings, and be respected by all ages. He didn't want to follow the old path of his ancestors. This old path was opened up by a supreme figure like Battle Emperor Wu Yang. To the cultivators of the later generations, this was an extremely precious inheritance, but it was also a form of restriction. In Lin Sun's view, the experience and legacy of the ancestors could be used for reference and learning, but if he really wanted to create unprecedented achievements on the road of cultivation, he must set foot on his own path. All learning and reference were not for imitation. It was to draw inferences about other cases from one case, draw inferences about other cases by analogy, exhaust the wisdom of the ancients, and make use of it to create his own path of cultivation. Only then could he have the opportunity to surpass the ancient. Those who learn from me will live, and those who imitate me will die. The group moved forward under the leadership of Ji Xingyao. They encountered several dangers along the way, but they were all resolved without mishap. Why do I feel that since we crossed the long river of blood mist, the dangers we encountered along the way have been much smaller, and there has even been no fatal disaster? After a few hours, Emotian has said in a daze. The others thought for a moment and nodded secretly. Isn't this a good thing? If there is a fatal disaster, it will be a disaster rather than a blessing. We can only say that we are lucky. Ji Yunfeng laughed. Lin Sun rubbed the old copper ring on his finger thoughtfully. Was it really good luck? It's in front of us. Suddenly, Ji Xingyao, who was leading the way, said with a trace of joy. Everyone looked up and saw two majestic mountains standing in the distance. They were bare, like a pair of gates guarding the heaven and the earth. In the center, there was a canyon, which was filled with blood mist, and the scene inside could not be seen clearly. Last time, I found the god's blood well in this canyon, and the old toad you mentioned was trapped in it. Ji Xingyao transmitted her voice to Lin Sun. Lin Sun was shocked and nodded to show that he understood. Without delay, everyone stepped forward with a trace of expectation on their faces. The god's blood well, a place with heaven-defying good fortune, had been sealed for thousands of years. In ancient times there were also strong people who came here. But without exception, all of them returned in frustration. The reason was that the good fortune here was sealed, and could not be broken at all. But this time was different. This was an unprecedented great world, and the good fortune that had been sealed in the past would appear in this great world. The blood mist was heavy. Although they were excited, they were extremely vigilant because the more heaven-defying the good fortune was, the more terrifying the danger would be. All of them were top experts who had experienced hundreds of battles, so they naturally knew that if one wanted to seek good fortune, one must bear the weight of it. Before long, a dry well appeared in their field of vision. This well covered an area of about 3 m, and the stone wall beside the well was mottled with blood and emitted a horrifying, ghastly, and strange aura. At this moment, Qi Yunfeng opened an old scroll, looked at it for a moment, and then said with a smile, "Yes, this is the entrance to the bloody hell." Swoosh! A black figure suddenly flashed out from the nearby blood mist like a bolt of lightning, and before everyone could react, it rushed into the dry well and disappeared. Damn it! Everyone was shocked, and their faces instantly became gloomy. Obviously, someone had entered the god's blood well before they did. The terrifying thing was that they hadn't been able to lock onto that person's aura from beginning to end. Who was that person? Only Lin Sun's eyes flashed with a trace of a strange expression. He kept having the feeling that the black figure from before was slightly familiar, and then he recalled that it was precisely the black bird that liked to take the blame. That fellow actually came as well? There's no time to lose. Let's act quickly. Qi Yunfeng took a deep breath and took the lead to move forward. After he sized it up briefly, he first withdrew a jade cauldron that emanated a violet glow, and it formed a defensive barrier around his body before he leaped into the god's blood well. Obviously, he was worried that there would be an ambush beneath the well, so he'd taken precautions in advance. The others followed closely behind him when they saw this. Lin Sun walked at the back. At the instant his figure leaped into the dry well, his fingers suddenly trembled slightly. It was that old and simple copper ring. However, when Lin Sun sensed it carefully, the copper ring was still the same as before. It didn't react at all, and there was nothing unusual about it. But the more it was like this, the more Lin Sun felt that there was definitely something strange about this ring. Quickly, it's here. Not long after Lin Sun and the others left, a group of cultivators whistled over from the entrance of the gorge that was suffused with blood mist. P.S. The news of winning the prize has come out. Everyone, please log into your Zongheng account and look at my news. Those who received the news of winning the prize, please contact customer service to claim your prize. Those who didn't win the prize, don't be depressed because there will be similar activities in the future. Chapter 12:19. There was no ambush under the divine underworld bloodwell. Lin Sun and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. They looked up and saw that the place where they stood was actually a silent, desolate, and gloomy world. It was as if they had walked into the netherworld. The world was deathly silent and cold. Looking up, a vortex formed by a bloody cloud appeared in the void. Just now, their group had been transported out of the vortex. After looking around for a while, Ji Xingyao and Si Yunfeng each took out a dilapidated picture scroll and put them together to study. The legendary divine underworld cave should be here. Before long, the two of them determined a position, and then they immediately took action with the others. On the way, Ji Xingyao transmitted a voice to Lin Sun. The divine underworld cave is just what we call it. It's a forbidden place, and a great fortune that defies the natural order is sealed there. In ancient times, some strong people once arrived there and judged that some kind of supreme inheritance was probably left in the divine underworld cave. Lin Sun nodded. He wasn't interested in it, and he only cared about where the old toad was now. The world was desolate, silent, and gloomy. Walking in it, all things withered, not even a blade of grass could be seen, and the air was filled with a cold death chi. Clang! Suddenly, the sound of a sword came. In front of them, a golden sword soared into the sky, cutting through the darkness of the sky, extremely dazzling. After that, it disappeared in a flash. 4 hours had passed. Although they hadn't encountered any danger along the way, the atmosphere was oppressively silent. Suddenly seeing such a scene, Lin Sun and the others were shocked. Is there a peerless sword here? Mo Tianhe's eyes flickered. So far, they hadn't seen anything valuable along the way in the bloody underworld cave, so they got nothing. After walking for dozens of miles, a barren tomb like a hill appeared. No one knew how long it had been standing here, and a stone tablet stood in front of the tomb. The stone tablet was dilapidated, and after the erosion of wind and rain, it could still be vaguely seen. 8 ancient words were written on it: "The Great Way exists forever." Lin Sun and the others couldn't help but be surprised. This tomb seemed ordinary, but it was extremely extraordinary. It stood here like a hill, and it emitted an invisible momentum. This sort of force connected the sky above and the earth below, and it fused into one with this area. Even though it was shapeless, it emanated a lofty, eternal, and boundless feeling. Standing before him, he was as tiny as an ant, causing others to involuntarily feel a sense of reverence. Could it be that this is a holy tomb? Si Yunfeng's eyes were burning. The others more or less revealed expressions of excitement. A divine tomb must contain something of astonishing value. Clang! Suddenly, a clear howl resounded out from within the tomb, and then a bright silver blade light charged out. It was like a graceful white dragon that soared into the sky, and it was extremely conspicuous in this dark world. That golden sword light just now must have come from this tomb. Mo Tianhe muttered to himself, looking forward to it. After experiencing numerous dangers and unusualness, they finally passed through the Nethergod blood well and entered this place with great difficulty, yet they didn't gain anything all along the way, and it caused them to suspect that they'd come to the wrong place. But now, no one would think that way. This is not saber chi, but a phenomenon manifested by the origin Tao flame. Ji Xingyao's clear eyes rippled with extraordinary splendor as she looked up into the sky. Lin Sun noticed as well that the silver saber chi that flashed up was actually an illusory phenomenon, and when he looked carefully, it seemed like it was condensed from silver-colored flames. In an instant, the expressions of everyone changed, and their hearts thumped violently. The origin Tao flame was a flame that was born from the quintessence of the Grand Tao, and it possessed an inconceivable and miraculous effect in nurturing and tempering supreme king weapons. It was common knowledge that so long as one stepped foot into the king realm, one would be able to nurture one's own natal treasure, and it was also called Supreme King weapons. Every single ancient sect had different secret techniques to refine and nurture Supreme King weapons, and each had its own profundities. However, whether or not it was refined by the origin Tao flame would cause the Supreme King weapon to possess a completely different might. With the assistance of the origin Tao flame, the quality and might of the Supreme King weapon would undergo a tremendous change, and it would possess the potential to advance into a saint treasure. Without the assistance of the origin Tao flame, relatively speaking, the quality and power of the Supreme King weapon would be limited, and it would be impossible for it to grow into a saint treasure in the future. For example, if Lin Sun refined a supreme weapon of King's Path, he could constantly refine the weapon with the original Taoist fire. As long as there were enough spiritual materials and divine materials, the supreme weapon of King's Path could be constantly transformed until it evolved into a holy treasure. On the contrary, if there was no origin Tao flame, it would be impossible to achieve this step. This was the value of the origin Tao flame. In the outside world, the origin Tao flame had long been divided up by the old monsters in various sects, and there were very few of them left. After all, which old monster would give such a treasure to the younger generation? Even peak kings like Ji Xingyao, Mo Tianhe, and Yun Feng had only been told by their sects before they came to the absolute summit region that if they were able to step foot into the ultimate king realm and return safely, then their sects would consider seeking a ball of quintessence Tao flame for them. In other words, if Ji Xingyao and others wanted to obtain the origin Tao flame, they must also meet the requirements of their sects. So, it is very likely that there is more than one kind of origin Tao flame buried in this tomb? Yun Feng gasped and couldn't calm down. It must be so, and the quality of the origin Tao flame that can show such a shocking phenomenon is absolutely amazing. Ji Xingyao's starry eyes were shining, and she was also quite excited. Before arriving at the Cave of God Underworld, it was very likely that they would get a great fortune that could only be encountered by chance. It was difficult for anyone to calm down. The origin Tao flame exists forever. Lin Sun looked at the mottled stone tablet and said, there should be a chance about the origin Tao flame hidden here. One of the important reasons why he hadn't refined the Supreme King weapon before was that he still lacked a kind of origin Tao flame. Now, the chance was very likely to be in front of him. While they were talking, on the hill-like tomb, there were rays of bright light rising into the sky one after another, evolving into different shapes and amazing phenomena. It could be judged that there were definitely a lot of origin Tao flames under the tomb. In that case, let's act quickly. As soon as Yun Feng's words came out, everyone immediately echoed. They really couldn't wait. Wait, Lin Sun suddenly said. He stepped forward and released his divine awareness to sense carefully. The others frowned a little. Why was there a need to be so careful? Couldn't they just break the tomb? Let me do it. The strong man named Jean Lucio was a little impatient. He stepped out, took out a black spear, and suddenly swung it down with a roar. Boom! The void suddenly collapsed and exploded, which showed how fierce this blow was. However, at this moment, Lin Sun waved his sleeve and retreated with Ji Xingyao, far away. At the same time, the tomb suddenly emitted a taboo wave, which spread like a tide. With a bang, Jean Lucio was the first to bear the brunt of it. He was severely shaken and fell hundreds of meters away, with blood spurting from his mouth and nose. Mo Tianhe, Yun Feng, and the others didn't retreat at the first time, and were also affected. They all dodged and resisted in a panic, and noisy screams followed. Only Lin Sun and Ji Xingyao were safe and sound. Have you seen it before? Ji Xingyao couldn't help asking. Lin Sun said, I just felt something was wrong, so I asked you to wait a moment. I didn't expect that Taoism fellow Jean was a little impatient, so there was such an accident. Jean Lucio, who had just returned, suddenly looked a little embarrassed. Was Lin Sun blaming him for the delay? When he was about to say something, Yunfeng glared at him with cold eyes. He suddenly became stiff and didn't dare to say more. At the same time, Yunfeng said with a friendly look, "Brother Jean, since you have noticed something strange, do you have a way to solve it?" The others also looked at Lin Sun. "Wait a moment, everyone." As Lin Sun spoke, he began to look around the tomb. For a moment, he stood in a place and suddenly exerted force under his feet. With a bang, the earth shook and the soil splashed, exposing a layer of strange black slate leading to the tomb, like a paved road. After clearing away the soil bit by bit, one could see that the black stone slab was imprinted with many totems. They were flames of various shapes and sizes. Some were like sabers, swords, cauldrons, and towers. Some were like birds, beasts, and demons. Seeing this, everyone was excited and couldn't help but look at Lin Sun. It seemed that they didn't expect that Jean Di could see through the truth of this place. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He walked along the black slate to the foot of the tomb. After a short look, he stretched out a hand and pressed it gently in the air. Crack! Crack! An amazing scene appeared. As Lin Sun pressed down, the ancient rocks under the tomb were separated to two sides, revealing a tunnel-like path leading to the depth. "It's done?" Others were surprised and looked at Lin Sun with more and more strange eyes. They didn't expect that Jean Di had such a magical ability. In fact, this was the credit of the eyes of Mocking Wind, which had a magical effect on detecting acupoints and pulse. As Lin Sun stepped into the King realm, the power of the eyes of Mocking Wind became more and more wonderful. It could see through more falsehoods and see through the essence of heaven and earth. Emotienha rubbed his hands and couldn't help rushing into the tunnel. But he immediately stopped, looked at Lin Sun with embarrassment, and asked modestly, "Brother Jean, is it safe now?" Lin Sun's eyes were a little strange. If this guy knew that he was the Lin Sun who had beaten him up, would he still be so polite to him? "It's safe now, but I can't judge whether there are other dangers in this tunnel," Lin Sun said casually. "How about Brother Jean lead the way? We will do our best to protect you." Si Yunfeng also spoke very politely. Ji Xingyao suddenly found that Lin Sun had become the backbone of their group. At least now, even Emotienha and Si Yunfeng had to rely on his strength and wisdom. It is gold, no matter where it is, it will shine. Chapter 12:20. Lin Sun readily agreed. But before taking action, he quickly restored a series of traces nearby one by one. Then, he asked Ji Xingyao and others to enter the tunnel first, and then he waved his sleeves quietly. Buzz! In an instant, the cracked rock in the tomb closed up again, and the tunnel disappeared. At the end of the tunnel, it was bright, and the airflow was warm and fresh, filled with a peaceful atmosphere. It was hard to believe that under a magical ancient tomb, it was not gloomy at all, but like a pure land. Everyone suppressed their excitement and moved forward cautiously. Soon, they were all surprised to find that the space under the tomb seemed to extend infinitely, becoming more and more vast and distant. And they all felt that they were getting smaller and smaller. This was not an illusion. It could only mean that there was a folded space under the tomb, which looked ordinary but was actually vast. Clatter! Suddenly, there was a thunderous sound of waves in front of them. Before long, a huge ice lake came into view. Snow-white sword chi swept out like rolling icicles, shining brilliantly and extremely sharp, with a kind of frightening aura. The nearby airflow suddenly became piercingly cold, and the ground around the lake was condensed into a thick layer of transparent ice. Even Lin Sun and others shuddered as soon as they arrived. The airflow was so cold that it penetrated into their bones and souls. In the lake, snow-white sword chi was densely packed, rolling like an icy tide, bringing with it a cold and sharp chi. But almost immediately, everyone's eyes were attracted by a snow-white ice lotus in the center of the lake. The ice lotus was crystal clear, holy and magnificent, and at its stamen, there was a snow-white transparent flame burning. As the flame swayed in the stamen, the snow-white sword chi in the lake also rolled, echoing with each other, which was wonderful. Gulp! Someone swallowed his saliva and made a sound, which was particularly harsh in this quiet atmosphere. But no one paid attention to it, because everyone could see that there was a ball of Taoist fire on the ice lotus in the center of the lake, and it was of extremely high quality. Have you ever heard of a similar Taoist fire? Emo Tianhe stared into the distance with burning eyes. It looks like the heavenly snow profound fire, but its quality is far inferior to this ball of Tao flame in front of me. Qi Yunfeng's eyes were also extremely bright, spitting out divine light. Previously, they had all determined that there was an origin Tao flame hidden beneath the tomb. However, when they saw it with their own eyes, they were still unable to conceal their joy and excitement. This was a great fortune that could only be chanced upon and not sought for. Let's not talk about that for now. There's only one quintessence Tao flame right now. Even if we obtain it, how should we distribute it? As soon as Ji Xingyao spoke these words, everyone's hearts shook while the fervor in their minds reduced greatly. They looked at each other and were slightly hesitant and indeterminate. Fellow Taoist Jin was the one who led us to this place. I suggest that fellow Taoist Jin obtain this item first. Unexpectedly, Yin Shui said that she wanted to give this ball of primordial fire to Lin Sun. The others looked at each other with flickering eyes. Even Lin Sun was a little surprised, but he immediately said with a smile, "You don't have to do that. I think this place is very magical and there must be a lot of primordial fire hidden here. I'm already very grateful that I can go with you this time. It's up to you to decide what to do with this ball of primordial fire." The others all looked relieved and looked at Lin Sun with much softer eyes. Qi Yunfeng took a deep breath and said, "Brother Jin, you are my friend. You can rest assured that I will definitely help you get a satisfactory quintessence Tao flame in this action." Emo Tianhe also said, "Yes, fellow Taoist Jin is generous and righteous, and he has been through thick and thin with us. He is no longer an outsider. If fellow Taoist Jin needs any help in the action later, I am willing to give you a hand." The others also nodded. Originally, Ji Xingyao muttered to herself that Lin Sun was a little muddle-headed. He didn't want such a great opportunity, but gave it up. But now, she vaguely understood. If Lin Sun unceremoniously fought for the opportunity in front of him, it would inevitably arouse the resistance and disgust of Qi Yunfeng and Emo Tianhe. Even if there was no conflict, it would inevitably cause a grudge. This would only put Lin Sun in a disadvantageous position in the next action. But at this time, he directly took a step back, which, on the contrary, won the approval and favor of Qi Yunfeng and Emo Tianhe, so that the relationship between them would not become tense, and it was also conducive to the next action. However, if Lin Sun knew Ji Xingyao's thoughts, he would definitely laugh. He didn't think so much. Before, with the perception power of his divine soul and the many observations of the wind-mocking eyes, he had already determined that although this quintessence Tao flame was rare, it was not suitable for him. Therefore, he gave it up without hesitation. Otherwise, it was not a big deal for him to completely fall out with Emo Tianhe and Qi Yunfeng. Finally, after negotiation, the quintessence Tao flame in front of him belonged to Qi Yunfeng. Boom! Qi Yunfeng, who had long been unable to restrain his excitement, took action at the first time. He ran his cultivation, and his right hand suddenly became as black as ink, surrounded by brilliant Taoist light. Then, he grabbed at the center of the lake across the air. Whoosh! But halfway, a snow-white sword Qi suddenly rushed out of the lake and blocked the attack. At the same time, a snow-white creature that seemed to be condensed from ice and snow appeared. Amazing! Such a place of opportunity actually has a creature guarding it. It can only prove that this quintessence Tao flame is extremely extraordinary. Qi Yunfeng's eyes lit up. Without saying a word, he raised his hand and struck out with a powerful palm print. At his level, a casual strike had the power to burn mountains and boil seas. The ice creature's body exploded with a bang, and it was forcefully killed. This guy's combat strength is extraordinary. He should be slightly stronger than Mo Tianhe. Lin Sun seemed to be lost in thought. Rumble! Unexpectedly, the ice and snow lake surged, and over 10 ice creatures rushed out in succession. They transformed into ferocious beasts, birds, and demons, and their auras were monstrous. They can already compare to experts in the second tribulation of the longevity realm. Ji Xingyao was shocked. Get lost! Qi Yunfeng's long hair fluttered, and his eyes were like cold lightning. His 5 fingers condensed into a strange seal, and wind and thunder surged, and it was extremely dazzling. At this moment, as an ancient freak that walked out of the Xianming divine mansion in the Saint Hermit land, a tyrannical figure who had stepped into the Extinction King realm, Qi Yunfeng fully displayed his unparalleled might. Bang! 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 A wave of explosions resounded. Those 10+ ice creatures exploded into pieces, and they were annihilated by the domineering might of Qi Yunfeng. He seemed to possess an unparalleled might that could sweep through the world. This allowed Lin Sun to instantly make a concrete judgment. Experts who had stepped into the Extinction King realm at least had the ability to kill ordinary longevity kings across realms. As for top-notch experts like Qi Yunfeng, they already had the combat strength to kill opponents 2 small realms above them. In other words, ordinary kings who had experienced the second tribulation of the longevity realm were destined to be no match for Qi Yunfeng. Whoosh! In the center of the lake, a snow-white Dao flame leaped out. As if it had a premonition that something was wrong, it tore through the void and was about to escape. It seemed extremely intelligent. However, Qi Yunfeng's large hand grabbed it firmly and pulled it back. When he flipped his palm, a snow-white Dao flame that looked like a spiritual sword floated in the air. It swayed and sprinkled a magnificent rain of light. Good treasure! With you, my Xianming spear won't be able to transform into a holy treasure in the future. Qi Yunfeng was in high spirits and laughed. Others more or less showed a touch of envy. In the outside world, there were not many things that could attract top kings like them, and the origin of Dao Flame could undoubtedly be regarded as one of the most precious treasures. Boom! After losing this ball of origin of Dao Flame, the ice lake in front of them instantly collapsed and disappeared in front of everyone at a speed visible to the naked eye. Let's go. Let's continue forward. Next, I will seek a similar opportunity for all of you. Qi Yunfeng was full of heroic spirit. Although his arrogant attitude was a little arrogant, he did not intend to take everything for himself. This alone made Lin Sun feel a lot more at ease. Just as everyone had predicted, the number of origin flames beneath the tomb was not small. After just 10 minutes, a strange divine tree appeared in front of everyone. The tree seemed to be made of gold and iron, and it was suffused with a metallic sheen. Its branches and trunk were bare, and a ball of golden Dao flame hung on its branch. As the Dao flame swayed, dazzling golden sword Qi appeared in the surrounding void, and it shot into the sky with a clang. It was extremely miraculous. In terms of appearance, it was completely not inferior to the ball of Dao flame obtained by Qi Yunfeng. The phenomenon of the golden sword that we saw outside the ancient tomb could not have been produced by this ball of origin of Dao flame, right? Jean Lucio revealed a trace of madness. Obviously, he was extremely tempted. But according to the agreement, this ball of Dao flame would be obtained by the Profound Inquisition Sword School. Boom! Mo Tianhe made a move, but he was also obstructed by the metal creatures that guarded this place. All of them seemed to be made of gold and iron, and their combat strength was extremely formidable. But in the end, they were still no match for Mo Tianhe and were slaughtered. The ball of golden origin of Dao Flame was also obtained by Mo Tianhe. At this point, everyone was more and more expectant. 2 balls of origin of Dao Flame had been obtained, which undoubtedly proved that the distribution of origin of Dao Flame in the world under the tomb was far beyond their imagination. During the rest of the journey, they encountered another green cloud that was swaying high in the void. The cloud also contained the origin of the way fire. The Tao flame evolved into a cyan, ancient lamp, which was extremely wonderful. In terms of quality, it was even better than the previous 2 balls of origin of Tao flame. In the end, it was obtained by Ji Xingyao. According to the agreement, if they encountered the origin of Tao flame again, it would be Lin Sun's turn. Lin Sun naturally had no objection to this. Even if he couldn't use it, he could hide it and give it to others in the future. It didn't take long for a silver flaming mountain to appear in everyone's sight. At the top of the mountain, a ball of silver Tao flame floated, sprinkling dreamlike brilliance. The quality of this Tao flame is extraordinary. Qi Yunfeng and others all realized that the quality of this ball of Tao flame seemed to be a little higher than the ones they had obtained before, which made them all excited. Who would complain about such a rare opportunity? But in the end, they still refrained from breaking the rules. Along the way, Lin Sun had left a good impression on them, so they didn't want to rob him. Chapter 12:21. No matter what other people thought, at least for Lin Sun, he was still a little dissatisfied with the Taoist fire at the top of the Silver Mountain. He didn't judge by intuition, but tested it with Duanren in his sea of consciousness. But the response he got was indifferent. It seemed that Duanren had no interest in whether he could get this Taoist fire for sacrificial refining or not. Lin Sun was not the only one who made such a judgment. He also asked Ji Xingyao. When she collected the cyan Taoist fire, her treasure obviously produced a kind of excitement and desire. This made Lin Sun wonder whether Duanren was too picky, or the appearance of the silver Taoist fire was really not satisfactory. But from the reaction of Qi Yunfeng and Mo Tianhe, it seemed that they all coveted the silver Taoist fire and believed that the appearance of the silver Taoist fire was a little better than the Taoist fire they had obtained. These thoughts flashed in Lin Sun's mind, and he stopped thinking about it. Whoosh! He rose into the air and was about to take action. At this moment, a terrible aura surged over. Lin Sun suddenly looked up and saw a treasure ship wrapped in Taoist light, pressing down at an incredible speed. Qi Yunfeng and Mo Tianhe looked up at the same time. When they saw the treasure ship, their pupils all shrank. Flowing fire warship. This was the ship of Wu Lingdao, the 13th prince of Golden Crow Branch. It was extremely fast and famous in the outside world, like a flowing fire chasing the sun. This kind of opportunity can't be touched by anyone. Get out of here! A cold roar sounded from the treasure ship. At the same time, a burly figure appeared in front of the warship. He pulled up a big animal bone bow and shot an arrow at Lin Sun, who was standing in the air. Whoosh! A dazzling spiritual arrow shot out, tearing the void with a fierce and overbearing momentum. Vaguely, around the arrow, there was a shadow of a fierce beast, sky-turning Ho, roaring at the sky with overwhelming power. Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly became cold. The man directly shot him without any hesitation, which was undoubtedly very overbearing and domineering. Because it happened so suddenly, Lin Sun was a little surprised, so he could only stimulate his cultivation to avoid it. Boom! Thousands of meters away, a giant mountain was shot by an arrow. It collapsed on the spot and turned into ashes, filling the sky with smoke and dust. Even Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. The world beneath the tomb was different from the outside world. The mountains and the earth were extremely sturdy and hard to destroy. Yet, this person was able to destroy a mountain with a single arrow, so he must possess extremely outstanding combat strength. Wow, you can dodge it? I underestimated you. The warship was suspended in the void, shrouded by a layer of Taoist light. The burly figure stood on it and looked at Lin Sun in surprise. This person had hair that was like a halberd, and his skin was bronze in color. He held a beast bone longbow in his hand, and his entire body emitted a wild and oppressive domineering aura. Along with him speaking, a few young men and women walked out successively from the bow of the ship, and all of them possessed an extremely great might. Their graceful bearing was dazzling, and their gazes swept over like lightning, causing them to be incomparably terrifying. He possessed the aura of an extinction king, and his entire body emanated a sharp aura. With a single glance, one could tell that he was a veteran of hundreds of battles, a ruthless character who had been baptized in blood and fire. Before Lin Sun had a chance to speak, the burly young man had pulled the bowstring to the fullest again and shouted, "Go to hell!" His muscles were bulging, and his whole body was flowing with golden Taoist light. Like a dazzling god of war, he shot an arrow with unparalleled sharpness. What was arrogance? This was it. Without saying a word, he directly wanted to kill Lin Sun and seize his fortune. Those who dared to do this were either madmen who did not know the difference between life and death, or vicious people who were full of confidence. Lin Sun's heart was already surging with killing intent. Since he set foot in the Extinction King realm, he had never been treated like this. Stop! However, before Lin Sun took any action, a figure had rushed forward and slapped the spiritual arrow, causing it to deviate from its trajectory. Boom! A deep pit was dug in the ground, and the earth shook. This figure was Qi Yunfeng. Seeing him, Lin Sun was slightly surprised, but he restrained his killing intent. At the same time, Ji Xingyao, Mo Tianhe and others also approached and stood in the same camp as Lin Sun, looking at the treasure ship gloomily. "Wu Shanlin, you directly want to kill my friend without saying a word. Don't you think it's too overbearing?" Qi Yunfeng's face was cold, and his eyes were staring straight at the burly young man on the bow. This guy is an ancient freak from the sky-flipping roar in the sacred hermit land. He is an extremely fierce character. At the same time, Ji Xingyao transmitted a voice to Lin Sun. However, it's a little unexpected that he came on the flying fire warship of Wu Lingdao, the 13th Prince of Golden Crow. The sky-flipping roar. It was a famous clan in ancient times, which was no worse than the bloodline of Golden Crow. It was a clan that was naturally belligerent. However, Lin Sun's attention was completely attracted by the line of Wu Lingdao, the 13th Prince of Golden Crow. Attracted, when he looked at the warship, he realized that the owner of the warship was actually the owner of his enemy. "Ha, it turns out that you are from the Xianming Palace. You are also here. Sorry, I didn't notice you just now." Wu Shanlin grinned. It seemed that he was apologizing, but in fact, his attitude was extremely frivolous and domineering. He was not afraid of Qi Yunfeng's questioning at all. Beside him, a group of men and women all looked playful. This caused a wisp of anger to arise on the faces of Qi Yunfeng, Mo Tianhe, and the others. "These fellows are truly arrogant. Now that you have noticed, should we leave?" Qi Yunfeng took a deep breath and said coldly. The other side had a large number of people, and he suspected that Wu Lingdao, the 13th Prince of Golden Crow, was also on the warship. Otherwise, according to his temper, he would not be able to bear it. After all, he was an ancient freak of the Xianming Palace. How could he be afraid of a peer? Leave? Haha, why should we leave? Wu Shanlin tilted his head and picked his ears. He acted as if he didn't care about them and said, "To put it bluntly, I advise all of you to disappear as soon as possible. We've already set our eyes on the fortune beneath this tomb. Whoever dares to covet it will be making life difficult for us." Behind him, the group of men and women looked more and more playful. Qi Yunfeng, Mo Tianhe, and the others' faces were completely gloomy. They were furious, and their eyes were full of killing intent. Did these guys really think that they were just decorations? Qi Yunfeng was about to say something, but he was stopped by Lin Sun, who said, "They want to snatch my Taoist fire. In that case, let me deal with them." Qi Yunfeng and the others were all stunned, almost not daring to believe their ears. How could this guy make such a joke at this time? Didn't he see that the other side had a large number of people, and all of them were peerless overlords? Even Wu Shanlin and the others were stunned, and then they couldn't help laughing. This guy was obviously mad and had lost his mind. That was why he dared to say such stupid words. Lin Sun's expression was very calm, without any emotion. His black eyes were deep and indifferent, as if he was completely unaware of the harsh laughter around him. But only Ji Xingyao knew that demon god Lin was completely angry. "You said that you want to deal with us alone? Come on, tell me, who gave you the courage to be so arrogant?" On the bow, Wu Shanlin pointed at Lin Sun. This action carried a sense of humiliation, not to mention the contempt and sarcasm in his words. "Why talk nonsense with an idiot? Brother Wu, I'll go and get that Taoist fire for you." At the same time, a man in a white robe with golden eyes walked out and went straight to the top of the silver mountain. This was undoubtedly equivalent to completely disregarding Qi Yunfeng and the others, and they'd taken the ball of silver Dao flame to be theirs. This caused Qi Yunfeng and the others to be infuriated, so how could they endure it? However, before they could attack, there was already a figure that was a step ahead of them. It was Lin Sun. He stepped in the void, seemingly slow but actually fast. Like a stream of nothingness, he suddenly came in front of the man in a white robe. The man in a white robe was shocked by Lin Sun's speed. Immediately, a playful smile appeared on his lips. "Are you really going to die?" As he spoke, he had already made a brazen attack. He clenched his fist and smashed it like a giant hammer at Lin Sun's head. Boom! This blow was fast, accurate, and fierce. The fist force was condensed and dazzling, and the Taoist sound was like a landslide and a tsunami. From this decisive and incomparably fast reaction, it could be seen that the man in a white robe was not a simple figure in the Zhu Shen King realm. Unfortunately, he met Lin Sun this time, and it was Lin Sun who was in a boiling killing intent. In the face of this punch, Lin Sun just stretched out his hand, and an unparalleled force burst out, offsetting the opponent's fist momentum, and easily grasped the opponent's wrist. Crack! The man in a white robe was caught off guard. Just as he was about to change his move, he felt a sharp pain in his wrist and completely exploded into powder. Before he could scream, Lin Sun's other hand had already grasped his neck. "You!" The man in a white robe screamed and completely panicked. He struggled with all his strength, but it was in vain. With a bang, his neck was broken, and blood flowed like a waterfall. His spirit wanted to escape, but it was drowned by the power bursting out of Lin Sun's palm, and instantly exploded and died. There was a dead silence. Ji Xingyao, Si Yunfeng, and Mo Tianhe were originally angry and about to attack, but in the blink of an eye, they saw such a bloody scene, and immediately felt dizzy and shocked. On the treasure ship, Wu Shanlin and others were still sneering, as if they were watching a good show, and regarded Lin Sun as a dead man. But who would have thought that such a reversal would happen in an instant, which made them all shocked, and they opened their eyes wide, wondering whether it was an illusion. One blow killed a peerless king? This scene was undoubtedly too shocking. It was like a bolt of lightning that shook the heavens, and it caught everyone off guard and filled them with disbelief. In the dead silence, Lin Sun opened his mouth. "How can you, a piece of trash, meddle with my chance? You deserve to die." As soon as he finished speaking, bang! The body of the man in a white robe exploded into a blood mist, and his body and spirit were really destroyed. P.S. 2 things. First, Goldfish will go out for 3 days, and I will try to make sure that there are 2 updates in the next 3 days. When I come back, Goldfish will prepare for an explosive update. Chapter 12:22. Peerless kings and peerless kings were of the same generation and were at the same level. In a battle between peers, it was extremely rare for the outcome to be decided in the blink of an eye. But now, the white-robed man could not even withstand a single blow. Lin Sun killed him as if he was killing a chicken or a monkey. Lin Sun's clean and decisive means of killing him was particularly shocking. Blood splattered and dyed the void red. It was a shocking scene. A peerless king had died just like that? In the deathly silent atmosphere, everyone couldn't help but be dazed. As peerless kings, they understood how amazing it was for Lin Sun to be able to do this so easily. Si Yunfeng, Mo Tianhe, and the others were wondering if Jin Di was a real pure-blooded descendant of the true dragon. Otherwise, how could his combat strength be so abnormal? When they thought of how they did not believe Lin Sun when he said he would deal with this matter alone, an indescribable feeling welled up in their hearts. As for Wu Shanlin and the others, their first reaction was disbelief. They even suspected that the white-robed man had been careless, which was why he was killed so easily. Otherwise, all of this could not be explained. The funny thing was that at this moment, a feather-robed woman on the ship came to her senses and screamed, He killed Taoist Gongsun?" Her voice tore through the dead silence. It also made everyone completely sober up. "It's your turn." Lin Sun did not snatch the silver Dao fire. His black eyes were like lightning as they locked onto Wu Shanlin, who was on the bow of the ship. He would not forget how this guy had treated him just now. "You're courting death." Wu Shanlin's face darkened. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes flashed with lightning. He held the beast bone bow in his hand and exuded shocking blood qi. Dao light rumbled, causing his whole body to shine and his clothes to flutter. He looked like a god. Dong, dong. Lin Sun stepped in the void. With every step he took, the void collapsed and the sound shook the sky. As he strode forward, the aura around his body rose steadily, and his lone and tall figure emitted a disdainful aura that seemed capable of devouring the world. Wu Shanlin squinted his eyes, which were as sharp as blades, and in his hands, the beast bone bow was being pulled back by him. This time, he used all his strength and did not dare to hold back. Bang! 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 The divine arrows shot through the sky and emanated deafening explosions. Every single arrow was dazzling like a divine ray of light, and they revealed terrifying phenomena. The dense rain of arrows poured down, causing the expressions of Ji Xingyao, and Ai Yunfeng, and the others to change. Without a doubt, Wu Shanlin was extremely powerful, as an ancient freak of the heaven-flipping Ho bloodline who had stepped into the Extinction King realm. The power he grasped far surpassed his peers. "Brother Wu, you must kill him! Avenge fellow Taoist Gongsun!" The people on the ship shouted loudly, cheering for Wu Shanlin. To everyone's surprise, in the face of such overwhelming killing, Lin Sun's expression remained the same. He didn't dodge, but stepped on the air. Bang! When the first arrow burst out, it was blocked 1 foot in front of Lin Sun. It was like falling into a quagmire whirlpool, buzzing and wailing. Then, Lin Sun snapped his fingers, and the arrow burst into pieces inch by inch, turning into a rain of light. His action was understated, without a trace of smoke and fire. Everyone's eyes suddenly widened and they gasped. How could this be possible? The power of that arrow was enough to penetrate gold and crack stones, and deter any peerless king. But now, it seemed to be powerless. This made people's hearts tremble. Bang! Bang! The dense rain of arrows poured down. When each arrow arrived in front of Lin Sun, it was like falling into a quagmire of china, sharply decreasing in speed and losing its sharpness. In a flash, Lin Sun crushed them one by one, as if he was brushing off a group of bugs from his clothes. In the process, he didn't stop at all. Rising up, he was not far from the treasure ship. This made Wu Shanlin's face flicker. He gritted his teeth, abandoned the big bow, and replaced it with a sky halberd. Then, he jumped out of the ship and attacked Lin Sun. Boom! The sky halberd swept up, cutting the void, setting off a torrential red glow, which was extremely terrifying. This treasure was inscribed with all kinds of strange Taoist patterns. Obviously, its origin was extraordinary, and it had earth-shattering power. At the same time, Lin Sun, who was stepping forward, had condensed and deduced his momentum to the extreme, and suddenly rushed out. Whoosh! Like a straight streamer, Lin Sun disappeared in place. Wu Shanlin's pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment, Lin Sun's speed was so fast that he almost couldn't lock on to him. In his field of vision, he only saw a crystal fist, which was expanding rapidly. Clang! The sky halberd shook violently and collided with Lin Sun's fist, making a deafening explosion. The fluctuations produced by the two made the void burst into pieces. Puff! After this blow, Wu Shanlin's qi and blood rolled, and he coughed up blood. He was shocked. He felt as if he had been hit by a moving mountain, and all his muscles and bones showed signs of being unable to bear it. But he had no time to care about this. He let out a hysterical roar, waved the halberd, and fought with all his strength. Clang, clang, clang. In just a few breaths, the two had fought hundreds of times. Lin Sun's dense fist strength hit the halberd, making it wail violently. Wu Shanlin's body shook violently. His cheeks were flushed, and his perlicue was bleeding. He kept staggering back. He was completely suppressed and couldn't bear such a fierce attack. Everyone felt the sound of the collision was like a magic sound in their ears. Their qi and blood rolled, and they couldn't help but look shocked. As soon as they fought, even Wu Shanlin was completely suppressed. Before, he was so overbearing and domineering. As soon as he arrived, he regarded Lin Sun as a prey and directly attacked him. From time to time, he even picked his ears to show his disdain and contempt. But now, he was directly suppressed by Lin Sun. The appearance of him coughing up blood in a sorry state caused everyone's hearts to palpitate with fear, and a chill ran down their spines. Who on earth is he? On the treasure ship, those men and women didn't care about cheering. They all shouted, realizing that they had provoked a tough guy this time. Si Yunfeng and others also wanted to ask this question. They also didn't want to be shocked by Lin Sun's fighting strength. In the void, Lin Sun was surrounded by Taoist light. He was like a devil descending to the world. His fists were wrapped with the power of the law and burst out a terrible light. Boom! Another blow. Wu Shanlin couldn't bear it anymore. He screamed, and the sky halberd flew out of his hand. His armor was broken, and his body fell from the air. But before he landed, Lin Sun had already rushed over. Not good. On the battleship, those men and women all changed their expressions. They realized that Wu Shanlin might be in trouble. However, before they could rescue him, Lin Sun had already stepped on Wu Shanlin's body with one foot and exerted force. Bang! Wu Shanlin fell at an even faster speed, breaking a big pit on the ground. No one knew how many bones in his body were broken. He screamed miserably, completely terrified. He had never thought that the person he viewed as prey would be such a powerful and ruthless person. Everyone was stunned. Wu Shanlin was an ancient freak of the sky flipping ho, and his fighting strength was more terrible than ordinary supreme kings. But now it had been suppressed as easily as crushing dry weeds. At the same time, Lin Sun frowned. According to the power of his foot just now, it was enough to smash a mountain, but Wu Shanlin was only injured, not killed. Swish! He attacked again and stepped on the air. Stop! Those men and women on the battleship shouted, but they were blocked by Si Yunfeng and the others, who stared at them expressionlessly. Si Yunfeng and the others were also full of anger just now, and they had nowhere to vent it. How could they let these people besiege Lin Sun again? Boom! Wu Shanlin rushed out of the big pit and tried to dodge. But it was useless. Once again, he was stepped on by Lin Sun and smashed to the ground. Ah! He screamed, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets, and his whole body was in pain. There was a kind of unspeakable shame in his heart. Being trampled by a peer like this almost drove him crazy. Buzz! In his chest, there was a strange fluctuation, and a magnificent purple glow was flowing, which took him away from Lin Sun's trampling. Damn you! Wu Shanlin roared to the sky like a crazy demon. His hair was flying in the air, and his burly body emitted a monstrous bloody light. On his chest, there was a mysterious and magnificent purple light flowing, which turned out to be a heart protection mirror. Although it was not a holy treasure, it was surging with a very mysterious aura. The reason why Lin Sun failed to kill him before was because of this heart protection mirror. Purple Mountain Mirror! Someone on the battleship shouted. No wonder. This is a rare treasure that fellow Taoist Wu obtained not long ago. It can help him resolve 3 fatal tribulations. Someone said enviously. 3 times. Lin Sun's black eyes were deep. Standing in the void, his black hair fluttered, and his body was surrounded by clear Taoist light, like a god descending to the world. Hearing this, everyone's heart thumped and they knew it was not good. Swish. At the same time, Lin Sun attacked. Purple Mountain Mirror had helped Wu Shanlin twice before. For Lin Sun, since he could kill Wu Shanlin twice, he could kill him 3 times. 4 times Wu Shanlin, who was angry, also realized that it was not good. Seeing Lin Sun rushing towards him, he chose to escape without hesitation. At the same time, he roared, Wu Lingdao, you still don't want to make a move at this moment? Boom! Lin Sun rushed towards him at an incredibly fast speed. Instant of spring and autumn. Lin Sun pressed out his finger, which seemed to gather the power of spring and autumn throughout the ages, covering the whole world. Stop! But at the same time, a low voice rang out. What was even faster than the sound was a golden figure that had rushed over. However, both the voice and the golden figure were 1 step slower than Lin Sun's finger. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun had no intention of stopping. Originally, when he heard the voice of the golden figure, Wu Shanlin was relieved, knowing that Wu Lingdao would not let him suffer. But at this moment, he was shocked to find that Lin Sun's attack came to him without any pause, and the power made it difficult for him to breathe. He had a feeling of helplessness that there was no way to escape and no way to avoid. No! Wu Shanlin roared, trying his best to resist like a trapped beast. Bang! But the next moment, Purple Mountain Mirror exploded. Bang! Then Wu Shanlin's body exploded. Chapter 12:23. With 1 finger Wu Shanlin was killed. Even with the protection of Purple Mountain Mirror, it was in vain. Moreover, all of this happened in an instant. It was fast to the extreme. No matter if it was Qi Yunfeng's group or the men and women on the warship, all of them were horrified and completely terrified. Wu Shanlin was an extremely powerful supreme king, but he was killed just like that. Boom! Before everyone could react, the golden figure had already arrived explosively. It was an extremely handsome man with blonde hair. His whole body was overflowing with precious light, and he was holding a black spear flowing with divine flame. This man was Wu Lingdao, the 13th prince of Golden Crow. There were 13 princes in the branch of Golden Crow. As the youngest one, Wu Lingdao's fighting power was the best among his elder brothers. His talent was superb, and he was regarded as the little war king of the branch of Golden Crow. At this moment, Wu Lingdao was stunned when he failed to save Wu Shanlin in time. Then his face became gloomy and he fell into a rage. A spear swept across, splitting the void at once. A terrible crack appeared, as if the world was torn apart. Accompanied by endless divine flame, it raged and spread. Wherever it passed, the void was incinerated and the mountains were melted. Just 1 blow showed the strength of Wu Lingdao, which made everyone tremble and tense. They subconsciously retreated quickly. Bang! Lin Sun turned around and didn't dodge. His fist burst out and collided with the spear. In an instant the world roared. With the 2 as the center, a terrible divine light spread out like a flood, and the weather changed. Because it was a passive counterattack, Lin Sun couldn't help but shake, and his blood was boiling. He couldn't help but be a little surprised that this guy's fighting power should not be underestimated. Wu Lingdao's eyes narrowed and then he snorted coldly. With a shake of his spear, thousands of beams of light appeared, covering the sky and earth, sweeping and bursting out like stormy waves. He was extremely fierce. His whole body was golden, like a god of war. Wherever he pointed with his spear, there was an unparalleled spirit. Moreover, the aura he exuded was obviously far stronger than that of his peers, and much stronger than that of Wu Shanlin. Bang! A terrible confrontation burst out. Lin Sun's fist rose up and collided with Wu Lingdao. One was like a demon and the other was like a god of war. They fought until the sky was dark and the moon was dim. Kill! Wu Lingdao's divine valiance was matchless, becoming more and more powerful. The spear in his hand shattered the void, piercing through the 9 heavens with unstoppable might. So powerful! Qi Yunfeng and the others were visibly moved. They'd heard of the reputation of the Dark Ascension sect a long time ago, but after personally witnessing its divine might, it still caused their hearts to go cold. 13th Prince, kill this bastard! All the men and women on the warship became excited. Before, Lin Sun had killed the white-robed man and Wu Shanlin one after another, which made them tremble with fear as if they had lost their parents. But now, with Wu Lingdao's appearance, they saw hope again. No matter who you are, you must die today since you dare to kill someone in front of me. Wu Lingdao's long golden hair fluttered as he brandished his spear to the limit. The tip of his spear became even more peerless and sharp as it swept through the universe, terrifying to the extreme. Rumble! This area of heaven and earth was shaking. The void collapsed, and surging golden divine flames wreaked havoc, making Wu Lingdao look like a matchless god of war. This guy, how can he be so powerful? Many people were shocked. The Extinction King realm had never been seen before, and no one knew how great the disparity in combat strength of this realm was. But from Lin Sun and Wu Lingdao, they all had a deep understanding. In this realm, these two could be called the top, and other peerless people couldn't compare to them. Just like the mountains that stood tall in the world, all had their peaks, but the height of the mountains also varied greatly. He's worthy of being the little war king of the Golden Crow bloodline. His combat strength is matchless. The 13th Prince will definitely win this battle. Many people on the warship whispered. During this process, Lin Sun had been in a passive situation. His edge had been faintly suppressed, and he wasn't as strong as when he fought against Wu Shanlin. This made Ji Xingyao and Qi Yunfeng a little worried. But no one knew that Lin Sun had been holding back. Bang! Another confrontation, and Lin Sun was hit and pushed back more than 30 meters. Tell me, how do you want to die? Wu Lingdao's expression was cold, and his eyes were malicious. He rushed forward, the spear in his hand almost burning, bursting with dazzling light. Cold light flowed in Lin Sun's black eyes. He realized that if he kept his combat strength to hide his identity, he might not be able to compete with Wu Lingdao. He didn't hide anymore. Boom! The next moment, his body burst with infinite light, and the dragon roared like a tide. 9 golden words of tribulation appeared, which surrounded his body and exuded great majesty. Clang! A word of tribulation flew out and turned into the divine beast Swanee, which smashed down with a big seal. The spear suddenly wailed and bent. Wu Lingdao's figure was also shaken and pushed back. This made his pupils shrink, and a terrifying light burst out of his eyes. I didn't know that you were still holding back. Everyone was shocked. Still holding back? The meaning of this was extremely horrifying. You are Demon Lin. But at the same time, a shout sounded. It was Mo Tianhe. He recognized Lin Sun's identity in an instant, and his face was full of disbelief. He had suspected this for a long time, but he couldn't be sure. But now, when he saw Lin Sun's power, he completely recognized it. This made him feel an indescribable awkwardness in his heart. Along the way, he had been extremely polite and respectful to Lin Sun. He had never thought that this guy was the Demon Lin who had beaten him up. What? Si Yunfeng and Yin Shui were also stunned. Jin Di was the Demon Lin? At the same time, the men and women on the warship also looked like they had seen a ghost. They must have heard of the name Demon Lin. Everyone, I didn't mean to hide it. If you feel that I have done something wrong along the way, I will apologize immediately. Lin Sun's figure suddenly changed, and he returned to his handsome and refined appearance. It was really him. Everyone recognized him, and their faces changed for a moment. "Brother Lin, give it your all. We are not people who don't know what's good for us," Si Yunfeng said loudly. He knew that in the face of a great battle, it was not the time to care about these things. The others also nodded. "Humph! You're simply too infuriating." Mo Tianhe snorted, but his tone was much softer. This made Ji Xingyao secretly heave a sigh of relief. To be honest, she was really worried that Si Yunfeng and the rest would fall out with Lin Sun after his identity was exposed. In that case, Lin Sun's situation would be extremely disadvantageous. Fortunately, none of this happened. Demon Lin, it's you." At the same time, Wu Lingdao's eyes were spitting divine light. His expression was terrifyingly cold, and his killing intent was even stronger than before. The world was wailing, as if it could not withstand his killing intent. Everyone's expressions changed. Everyone knew that the seventh Golden Crow Prince, Wu Lingfei, had died in Lin Sun's hands. Furthermore, Demon Lin had barged into Flying Star Mountain alone a while ago and massacred the Golden Crow lineage's lair, causing great damage to their forces. This was a blood feud. As the 13th prince of the Golden Crow lineage, how could Wu Lingdao not hate Demon Lin? He was not originally cultivating in the distant Fire Realm, and it was precisely because he heard of the various tragic encounters of the Golden Crow lineage that he rushed over immediately to kill Demon Lin. Now that Lin Sun's identity was exposed, Wu Lingdao had a feeling that heaven's net was wide and wide. This was the enemy that he was destined to kill with his own hands. At the thought of this, Wu Lingdao raised his spear and pointed it at Lin Sun from afar, saying, "After you die, I will keep your skull and cut it into a wine cup to let the world understand that this is the consequence of offending the Golden Crow lineage." "Really? It seems that you Golden Crows are all the same. Aren't you afraid that I will kill all the Golden Crows in this absolute summit domain?" Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and his heart was filled with great anger. In the burning immortal realm, he was targeted by the Golden Crow lineage. After arriving in the upper 9 realms, he was besieged by Wu Lingfeng's forces. Now, even Wu Lingdao wanted to kill him. What did he think he was? Die! Wu Lingdao roared. He could no longer control his killing intent. He rushed forward like a burning sun, his figure dazzling. Boom! At the same time, Lin Sun also attacked, performing the 9 strikes for shaking heaven and the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon. The power was much stronger than before. Bang! In an instant, Wu Lingdao's body trembled. The power surging from the spear was like a landslide and a tsunami, which almost shook him back. His face changed slightly. He looked up to the sky and roared, continuing to attack. Before, Lin Sun had held back, so he was suppressed. But now it was destined to be completely different. In the next battle, the situation had obviously changed. Lin Sun rushed forward like a demon. He was as powerful as breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. No matter how terrible and sharp the power of Wu Lingdao's spear was, it was crushed and destroyed by Lin Sun's absolute strength. Everyone on the warship was dumbfounded. The situation changed so fast that they couldn't react. No wonder he could wash several famous mountains and blessed lands with blood. He deserves his reputation. Qi Yunfeng and others sighed with emotion. Thinking that Jin Dui, who had been with them all the way, turned out to be the ferocious Demon Lin, they all had a subtle feeling. They even had some lingering fear. Fortunately, they didn't provoke this guy. Otherwise, they would be cheated. Clang! Suddenly, a deafening explosion sounded. In the void, Lin Sun grasped the spear with his bare hands. His 5 fingers were like iron hoop, firmly clamping the spear's edge. Then he exerted force in his palms and fingers and shook violently. The spear suddenly bent and wailed. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of strength was needed to block the spear with his bare hands? Wu Lingdao's face changed again. He didn't expect that Lin Sun, who no longer held back, would be so abnormal that he dared to seize the spear with his bare hands. "Get out!" he roared, and his whole body surged with fighting power. He wanted to shatter Lin Sun's 5 fingers and sweep him away. Lin Sun's eyes were cold. He ran the anger of Yazi, and a mighty force broke out. With a crack, he broke the spear. Bang! Caught off guard, Wu Lingdao's body shook violently. His blood and qi surged all over his body. His wrist was almost shattered, and the broken spear flew out of his hand. Meanwhile, his body staggered backwards as if he had suffered a terrifying impact. Chapter 12:24. With a flick of Lin Sun's wrist, the broken spear flew out and shot towards Wu Lingdao. Bang! Although Wu Lingdao managed to destroy the spear in a hurry, Lin Sun had already rushed over and punched him in the chest. Even though he had blocked it with all his might, Wu Lingdao still coughed up a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. Everyone gasped. Demon God Lin's might made them feel an unprecedented impact. Their hearts trembled, and they could not believe that his combat power was so strong. The defeat that Wu Lingdao suffered made their hearts turn cold. Everyone knew that Wu Lingdao's combat power was extremely strong, even stronger than Wu Shanlin's. However, he was still suppressed by Demon God Lin. How could they not feel disappointed? However, at this moment Lin Sun, who was about to continue attacking, suddenly stopped, and his black eyes focused. At the same time, Wu Lingdao's body emitted a surging power, and his entire body was bathed in golden light. Every breath he took caused the void to wail and tumble endlessly. In particular, a divine halo appeared behind his head. The divine halo reflected the golden crow Dharma form. It spread its wings and danced, bathed in flames, and emitted an earth-shattering might. Longevity Dharma form. He passed the first tribulation of longevity. Si Yunfeng exclaimed in shock. Everyone else present also widened their eyes. After stepping onto the path of longevity, as long as one passed the first tribulation of longevity, the Tao seed in their body would take root, and their essence, qi, and spirit would condense into a Dharma form to guard their soul. Within the Dharma form, a matching Tao profundity of longevity could be inscribed. In battle, it could unleash incredible power. This was the mark of a longevity tribulation monarch. Ordinary longevity tribulation monarchs were already common in the outside world. However, in this apex domain, there were very few monarchs who had stepped into the first tribulation of longevity. After all, these cultivators had only entered the apex domain for less than 2 years. It was already extremely amazing to be able to step into the apex monarch realm in such a short period of time. Not to mention the experts who had become longevity tribulation monarchs from the apex monarch realm. They were absolutely rare. For a moment, the way everyone looked at Wu Lingdao changed. There was no doubt that Wu Lingdao had taken a huge step forward in the search for the ultimate Tao path and reached a higher level. Originally, I planned to use this as a trump card to deal with Qi Lingxiao, Saintus Lin Shui, and Yun Qi Bai. At this time, Wu Lingdao's aura was like the sea, covering the entire world. His voice was low and cold. You were able to force me to use it ahead of time. You can be considered a top character. What a pity, you will die in the end. The word die was filled with murderous intent, causing everyone's hearts to palpitate. How were they supposed to fight under such circumstances? Originally, the Extinction King realm was already abnormal. Now that Wu Lingdao had passed the first tribulation of longevity, his cultivation had undergone an earth-shattering change. What could Demon God Lin use to fight against him? You're still in the King's realm after all. Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you've passed the longevity tribulation? Lin Sun looked calm and unperturbed. He was surprised that Wu Lingdao had stepped into the first tribulation of longevity, but he was not afraid of him. As early as when he was in the 5 realms, he had killed more than once. Now he had become a peerless king and walked on his own path. He had long cultivated the belief of invincibility. How could he be afraid? It could be said that since he stepped into the Extinction King realm, no one of his peers could force him to use his ultimate power. Not even Wu Lingdao. Lin Sun wanted to see how much ability Wu Lingdao had when he was one level lower than him. "You're courting death." With a cold voice, Wu Lingdao came in the air with the divine halo behind his head. The golden crow exuded immeasurable majesty, shocking the whole audience. Chop! Behind him, a pair of golden crow wings suddenly appeared. Like the heaven-cutting blade, it was incomparably dazzling and chopped forward. Boom! Lin Sun resisted with the 9 strikes for shaking heaven at first, but he was shaken and staggered back. Qi Yunfeng and the others' expressions changed abruptly, and their hearts were in suspense. Even Mo Tianhe, who had a grudge against Lin Sun, couldn't help holding his breath and frowning. Chop! Wu Lingdao rushed forward like a golden crow covering the sky and the sun. His wings were like heavenly sabers, with the power to kill ghosts and gods. This time, Lin Sun fought with the 9 transformations of Calamity Dragon. 9 golden tribulation characters surrounded him, but he was still broken. The golden crow wings swept past and scratched his shoulder. Blood flowed out and the wound was deep to the bone. Good! On the warship, the cheers were like thunder. Those young men and women were all ecstatic. This was the advantage of a high realm. Even a false king was enough to despise the practitioners of the 5 realms. What was more, Wu Lingdao was a peerless king who had stepped into the first tribulation of Longevity realm. Chop! Wu Lingdao roared, and his power became more and more terrible. A golden flame flowed on his body, waving the golden crow wings, and it was as sharp as a heavenly saber. He was extremely conceited. His expression was ice-cold, and he seemed to be invincible. Bang! Lin Sun was shaken again, coughing up blood. This made Qi Yunfeng and the others worried. They looked at each other and secretly transmitted their voices. They decided to take action together and escape with Lin Sun if the situation was critical. As if aware of the thoughts of Qi Yunfeng and the others, the eyes of the young men and women on the warship flickered, and they locked on Lin Sun without a trace. Obviously, as long as Qi Yunfeng and the others took action, they would inevitably stop them. Lin Sun, you can die in peace. This time, no one can save you from Tai Shang. Wu Lingdao's voice was cold and cruel, and when you die, I will use your skull as a wine cup and drink with your blood. Boom! As he spoke, the golden crow wings were lifted, like a divine saber moving across the sky. But at the same time, Lin Sun, who was injured, suddenly raised his head, and his black eyes were surging with cold light. I thought you were great, but it turns out that you are just SOSO. Clang! Almost at the same time, the broken blade swept out, white and illusory. Silence. Chop! At this moment, the fury of Yazi and Battle Saint method superimposed, covered with the power of the law of water, so that this chop also produced unprecedented power. Time, void and airflow seemed to be still at this moment. All things returned to silence, except for the sudden appearance of a sharp blade, which was enough to amaze the ages. With a chi-la sound, a hole was torn open on the golden crow's wings that were descending. A rain of light swirled about before scattering with a loud bang. In the distance, Wu Lingdao's pupils suddenly shrank, and he stretched out his hand to slap out. Bang! Although the broken blade was defeated, it left a bloody wound in his palm. The burning pain made Wu Lingdao feel incredulous. He was actually injured? On the treasure ship, the cheers stopped abruptly. All the men and women were dumbfounded. How could the situation be reversed again? Qi Yunfeng and the others were also stunned. They were all ready to rescue Lin Sun, but the result was completely beyond their expectation. Buzz! The broken sword circled around Lin Sun, sprinkling dreamlike light, which added a murderous aura to him. Moreover, the injuries on his body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was the magical effect of the immortality. Chop! As if he still didn't believe it, Wu Lingdao's face was gloomy, and he attacked again. The bright golden crow wings swept across the sky, incinerating the void. Even though the air was extremely far away, the fierce spirit still made people present tremble. Chop! At the same time, Lin Sun also launched a chop. This time, it was life and death chop. This attack was fast, and it determined life and death in an instant. Swish! In the distance, Wu Lingdao's chest was cut with a long and narrow blood mark. His skin and flesh were torn, and blood was gurgling out. Bang! Almost at the same time, the golden crow wings had already arrived. But when it was less than 3 meters away from Lin Sun, it was split in half from the middle. Lin Sun stood there without dodging at all. It looked strange and incredible, but in fact, after the life and death chop swept out, it first cut the golden crow wings, and then cut Wu Lingdao. But because the speed was too fast, there was a visual error. All the people present had their eyes wide open, as if they were struck by lightning. It was hard to imagine how Lin Sun could counterattack like this under the situation of a realm difference. Monster! For Si Yunfeng and the others, Lin Sun's performance at this moment could not be measured by conventional standard. It was too abnormal. Damn it! Wu Lingdao roared. His face was extremely livid, and his eyes were about to spit fire. In the past, it was always him who killed stronger people across realms. But now, it was his turn to be injured by someone of a higher realm, which was unacceptable to him. Boom! He broke through the air, and 2 golden crow wings appeared behind him. Like scissors, he tried to strangle Lin Sun. This was a fatal blow, which deduced his strength to the extreme. If it were any other top powerhouse, they would not be able to resist it and would be killed directly. Lin Sun's clothes were fluttering, and his black hair was flying. His injuries had already been healed. Facing this attack, he did not hesitate to use impermanence chop. Impermanence meant that there was no fixed form, just like the variable of Tao. As early as when Lin Sun was still in the reincarnation developing realm, impermanence chop was his most powerful trump card. And now, it was the first time he used this move since he stepped into the Extinction King realm. Why didn't he dodge? Mo Tianhe shouted. The others were also horrified, feeling extremely puzzled. But soon, they understood. Puff! Without a sound, Wu Lingdao's head suddenly separated from his body. Strangely, he seemed to be unaware of it, and his expression was still cold, cruel, and angry. It was not until a shocked exclamation sounded in the field that he suddenly realized something was wrong. Then he looked down and was shocked to find that his body was gone. His eyes widened, filled with shock and confusion, and the light in his pupils began to fade. Then, his consciousness suddenly became chaotic. Everything went black, and he completely lost consciousness. At the moment of his death, he did not understand how his head had been cut off. This was impermanence chop. When a variable came, if one did not notice it, life and death would be separated in an instant. Boom! With Wu Lingdao's death, his pair of golden crow wings had barely reached Lin Sun when they suddenly collapsed and disappeared. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun did not dodge at all. His figure did not move at all. Now, everyone finally understood that Lin Sun did not need to dodge, because Wu Lingdao had already been killed unknowingly. Chapter 12:25. Wu Lingdao was dead. The peerless overlord of the Golden Crow clan, known as the Little War King, had stepped into the immortality realm in an amazing manner and had a bright future ahead of him. But now, with his death, everything had vanished into thin air. The entire place was silent, and everyone was shocked into a daze. Lin Sun's combat power was so powerful that it almost subverted their understanding. Only now did they realize that even though they were all peerless overlords, there was a world of difference between different paths. The white-robed man and Wu Shanlin, who had died in Lin Sun's hands, were already influential figures. But when facing Lin Sun, they had no power to resist. Even an overlord like Wu Lingdao, who had stepped into the immortality realm, was killed by Lin Sun. This was simply against the natural order. The word monster was not enough to describe Lin Sun's strength. At this moment, everyone, including Qi Yunfeng and Mo Tianhe, looked at Lin Sun with complicated eyes, as if they were staring at a monster who did not play by the rules. Lin Sun was slightly out of breath. In this battle, he had killed 3 people in succession. Most importantly, he had used the 2 ultimate skills, the void-breaking finger of divination and the impermanence cut, which had consumed a lot of his energy. Apart from that, he was unharmed. Run! Suddenly, someone screamed and fled in panic on the flowing fire warship. Wu Shanlin and Wu Lingdao had died, leaving them without anyone to rely on. How could they hesitate any longer? Boom! The flowing fire warship roared as it moved. Like a startled hare, it crushed through the void and rushed into the distance. Want to leave? Have you asked your grandfathers? A cold smile suffused the corners of Si Yunfeng's mouth, and he'd already charged out explosively. The others also sneered and followed him. Before, these guys were more arrogant than the other, treating them as if they were nothing, which made Qi Yunfeng and the others feel ashamed. After all, they were all peerless overlords. Moreover, Qi Yunfeng and Mo Tianhe were ancient freaks, whose strength was no less than Wu Shanlin's. At a time like this, they would naturally not miss such an opportunity to beat a dog while it was down. Even Ji Xingyao moved out, her eyes full of killing intent. Obviously, Fairy Ji had been suppressing her anger and needed to vent it. You rest here. Leave these guys to us. Before leaving, Ji Xingyao sent a sound transmission to Lin Sun. She seemed to be worried that if Lin Sun continued to attack them, they would not even have the chance to beat Lin Sun when he was down. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment and then chose to stay. He first plundered the white-robed man, Wu Shanlin and Wu Lingdao. The bountiful spoils of war surprised him. In total, there were 4 godly medicines and more than 10 king medicines. Besides that, there were all sorts of spirit materials and divine materials. All of them were precious and rare in the outside world. After putting away these spoils of war, Lin Sun casually picked up a 9-leaf king ginseng and started gnawing on it. It was crunchy as if he was chewing a carrot, and his mouth was full of essence and medicinal fragrance. Before becoming a king medicine was definitely an extremely extravagant existence. It was a life-saving trump card. But now, he had more than 100 stalks of king herbs in his possession. Most of them were spoils of war from their enemies, but there were also some that they picked up themselves. It could be seen that robbing the enemy was definitely the simplest and crudest way to accumulate wealth. Of course, it was also very bloody and needed to bear the danger of life and death. Lin Sun swallowed the king ginseng in one gulp to replenish his consumed strength. Then he rose into the air and looked at a ball of Tao fire on the top of the silver mountain. Whoosh! However, when he was about to take action, a ghostly black shadow suddenly rushed out and picked up a big black pot. With a clang, it collected the silver Tao fire. It was the big black bird. Even Lin Sun didn't expect that this bird would suddenly jump out at this time. Moreover, it was so proficient in the essence of stealing that it directly collected the silver Tao fire in one go. The big black bird proudly blew a loud and clear hoodlum whistle, then flapped its wings and flew away, wanting to leave. Dahe, stop right there. Lin Sun was no longer what he used to be, and he had long been on guard against the thievish big black bird. He took the initiative and directly blocked the way of the big black bird. Hey, my little friend, we meet again. What a coincidence. The big black bird looked surprised, as if it had just seen Lin Sun for the first time. Stop pretending. Give it to me. Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning. He stared at the extremely cunning and black-hearted bird with a murderous look. The first time they met was in the dilapidated ancient temple in the depths of the Boundary River, where this bird was enshrined in a Buddhist shrine. The second time they met was in the world of burning immortals. This bird carried a black pot on its back and tried to hit him in the back twice. Now, it was the third time they met. Lin Sun only had one impression of this bird: black-hearted, cunning, and rogue. The big black bird rolled its eyes and then said fiercely, "Young man, I call you my little friend because I think highly of you. Do you really think you are someone important? Get out of my way quickly. If you dare to block my way again, I will kill you." This bird was definitely a person who would turn his back on Lin Sun. He suddenly revealed his rogue nature. Lin Sun couldn't help sneering. He suddenly grabbed the neck of the big black bird as fast as lightning. Bang! A black pot blocked in front of the big black bird, making Lin Sun's palms and fingers numb, but the black pot didn't move at all. The big black bird sneered, "Idiot, how dare you sneak up on me? Don't you know that I am the ancestor of sneak attacks?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and keenly noticed that the black pot was extremely strange. It was covered with a layer of obscure power that could produce the power of recoil. In other words, the power he had just grabbed was bounced back by the black pot, which made his palms and fingers numb. No wonder you like to take the black pot. It turns out that this thing is a rare treasure. Lin Sun thought. The big black bird immediately became vigilant and said, "Boy, it's just a ball of Taoist fire. You don't have to be so difficult to deal with me, do you?" Lin Sun suddenly stepped forward, and the invisible power of lower tyrant prohibition spread and suddenly shrouded the bird. The big black bird let out a strange cry, spread its wings, and staggered far away. A strange look flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. This was the first time he saw the power of lower tyrant prohibition fail and be avoided in this way. This thieving bird was not simple. "If you dare to mess around again, don't blame me for being rude." The big black bird fluttered its wings and flew into a rage out of shame. "Do you think I can capture you if I go all out?" Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with a dangerous light. "Just you? Of course." Speaking of this, the big black bird noticed that Lin Sun was obviously not joking. It immediately coughed and said seriously, "My little friend, we are old acquaintances. Why do you still want to fight?" Lin Sun approached and said, "Oh, since we are old acquaintances, why do you still want to rob me of my Taoist fire?" The big black bird retreated without a trace and said solemnly, "You are wrong. This Taoist fire is not suitable for you. If you are willing to listen to me, I can give you some guidance and tell you a place where there is primordial Taoist fire." Lin Sun suddenly showed interest and said, "Tell me about it." "Stop, don't move." The big black bird cried with a vigilant face. As expected, Lin Sun stopped and said, "Tell me, but if you dare to deceive me, I promise you will be skinned alive even if you can escape today." The big black bird's mouth twitched as if it wanted to swear, but it finally held back and said, "The primordial Taoist fire is hidden under a stone tower more than 300 miles away from here." Speaking of this, it seemed to think of something and stared at Lin Sun stealthily, saying, "If you want to go, you have to hurry up. A little guy of the three-legged golden toad has entered it. If you are late." Before it finished, Lin Sun was shocked. "Old Toad? You saw a young man in a green robe?" Lin Sun interrupted directly. The big black bird was surprised and said, "Do you know that boy? Damn it, it makes me angry. This boy is trapped in it, but he doesn't want to let me in. If I didn't want to argue with a junior, I would have killed him." Its face was full of anger and its tone was very loud, but even a fool could see that it must have suffered a lot in that place. Lin Sun didn't want to talk nonsense with it and said, "Tell me the specific location and I will let you go." The big black bird seemed to notice that Lin Sun was in a bad mood and asked curiously, "My little friend, will you tell me or not?" Lin Sun frowned and interrupted again. The big black bird almost couldn't help swearing again. How dare this guy scold it again and again. He really deserved a lesson. But in the end, it held back and told him the location. Lin Sun kept his promise and didn't embarrass it anymore, which surprised the big black bird. Before leaving, it turned its head and said, "Do you remember Gu Fozi I told you about? You should be careful of him." After saying that, it flapped its wings and flew into the sky. Gu Fozi? A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. He didn't like the successor of the earthly treasury temple at all. To Lin Sun's surprise, the big black bird came back. It said with a tangled look, "If, and I mean if, you can't defeat Gu Fozi, you must destroy Dharma's scripture of solitude and Bodhi wood in any case." In the end, it gritted its teeth and said fiercely, "Is there anything I should pay attention to?" Lin Sun frowned. "Alas, it's too troublesome. You only need to know that if you don't die, the earthly treasury temple will never let you go." Then, the big black bird flapped its wings and flew away. This time, it didn't come back. Lin Sun was silent, but his heart was not calm. What secrets were hidden in Dharma's scripture of solitude and that piece of Bodhi wood? Why did the earthly treasury temple insist on killing him? I should have caught this bird. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. This thief bird knew far more than he had imagined, but it was extremely cunning and tight-lipped. Perhaps this was cause and effect. Lin Sun got the opportunities left by Holy Monk Du Ji and Black Phoenix Holy Queen, but he also had to bear the danger of getting them. Gu Fozi, Lin Sun repeated the name in his heart again. Chapter 12:26. Before long, Ji Xingyao and Qi Yunfeng returned. There was a touch of joy on their faces. Obviously, the chase just now allowed them to vent the anger accumulated in their hearts. But when they saw Lin Sun, except for Ji Xingyao, all the others looked a little complicated. Before, they all treated Lin Sun as Jin Di, and they had developed an unusual sense of trust with Jin Di during the action. But when they learned that the real identity of Jin Di was Lin Sun, they were all caught off guard and at a loss. Especially now, when they faced Lin Sun again after the battle, their understanding of Lin Sun had become subtle. "Before, I heard a lot of rumors about you. At that time, I was very disdainful and even thought that if we meet again, I must cut down your prestige." Qi Yunfeng took the lead to speak with emotion. Who would have thought that my thinking at that time was still too simple? Few people of the same generation can suppress a figure like Brother Lin. His voice was low, and there was a trace of disappointment, admiration, and relief in it. This was already a high praise. Qi Yunfeng was not an ordinary figure. He was an ancient freak from the Xianming Divine Mansion in the Saint Hermit Land, and his combat power was extremely strong. The fact that he could speak his mind calmly at this moment undoubtedly proved that what Lin Sun had done before had already made him admire Lin Sun. It's not a loss to be defeated by the famous demon Lin. Next to him, Jean Lucio also spoke. When they first met, he had been defeated by Lin Sun with one move, and he had been brooding over it. But now, he could only admit it completely. The others also spoke one after another. For a time, the atmosphere became harmonious again. The reason was that even though Lin Sun had disguised his identity before, he had never done anything harmful to them along the way. In fact, he had even saved Yin Shui and opened up the passageway to the tomb world for them. Even in the action of seizing the origin of Tao, he showed noble character and unquestionable integrity. He took the initiative to take a step back and let Qi Yunfeng and Mo Tianhe get the origin of Tao first. Under such circumstances, how could Qi Yunfeng and his companions not appreciate it? Alas, I'm convinced. Mo Tianhe was undoubtedly the most entangled one. Not only had he been beaten by Lin Sun, but he had also been robbed of all his treasures. But now, he didn't have the confidence to challenge Lin Sun, so he had to let bygones be bygones. Whoosh! Lin Sun threw a storage bracelet to Mo Tianhe and said with a smile, "This belongs to Brother Mo. Now it's returned to its rightful owner. Take a look, is there anything missing?" Mo Tianhe was stunned at first, and then he was visibly moved. In the end, he took a deep breath and roared with laughter. "There's no need to look anymore. I, Mo Tianhe, am completely convinced by Brother Lin's bearing and broad-mindedness." Everyone couldn't help but feel delighted when they saw this. Ji Xingyao watched all of this quietly from the side. Her heart was not calm either. Whether it was Qi Yunfeng or Mo Tianhe, they were both prideful ancient freaks. Perhaps Lin Sun had the foundation to completely defeat them, but it was extremely difficult to convince them. Without any delay, Lin Sun and the others took action. On the way, Lin Sun told them that his friend Old Toad was trapped. Originally, he thought it was his personal affair and he didn't need to bother them. Unexpectedly, neither Mo Tianhe nor Qi Yunfeng left, indicating that if Lin Sun regarded them as friends, they should not say such things. Seeing this, Lin Sun also smiled and stopped mentioning it. Over the years in the ancient Desolation realm, Lin Sun had only made a few friends. Although his friendship with Qi Yunfeng and Mo Tianhe hadn't reached the point of going through thick and thin together. But of course, it was better to be friends than opponents. As for Qi Yunfeng, Mo Tianhe, and the others, wasn't it a blessing to be acquainted with the ferocious demon god Lin? Moreover, with their identities, they didn't care how many enemies Lin Sun had and whether he would implicate them. This was their confidence. If it were other practitioners, even if they respected Lin Sun, they were bound to avoid him as soon as they thought that they might be implicated by Lin Sun. It didn't take long for Lin Sun to find a tower according to the clues provided by the big black bird. The shape of this pagoda was extremely strange. It was shaped like a towering furnace, and it was constructed from enormous dark rock. The body of the pagoda was mottled, and it had obviously been standing here for countless years, causing it to emit an ancient and boundless aura. As soon as they approached it, they felt a scorching airflow blowing on their faces and their skin burning. At the same time, their souls felt extremely depressed, as if they were in the bronze furnace of troubled times and being roasted by a raging fire. This tower is by no means ordinary. Everyone was shocked. With their realm, they were not afraid of the attack of water and fire. But now, just approaching a stone tower made them feel a burning pain and depression inside and outside their bodies, which was very unusual. Lin Sun looked at the bottom of the stone tower and saw a pair of arches, round like Tai Chi, covered with dense obscure Taoist patterns. Was Old Toad trapped in it? Lin Sun took a deep breath and ran his divine awareness and wind-mocking eyes at the same time to carefully look at the stone tower in front of him. Suddenly, the scene in front of him changed. Boom! Between the heavens and the earth, everything was annihilated, and all that was left was a huge furnace that burned fiercely. Everything in the world, the sun, the moon, and the stars were all smelted into nothingness. Traces of time, tracks of space, they were all burned and refined by the furnace as if they didn't exist. That furnace was heaven and earth, the sun and moon, time and space, and everything in the world. It was the only and immortal. Boom! Before Lin Sun could sense it carefully, he felt a stinging pain all over his body as if he was in an endless sea of fire. Everywhere around him was raging flames. His soul and state of mind felt like they were about to be smelted. The next moment, he suddenly woke up, his face pale and his body soaked in cold sweat. Was that furnace just now the real face of this stone tower? Looking at the others, they were also observing and examining the tower, but they seemed to be unaware of it and there was nothing unusual. Lin Sun took a deep breath and thought to himself, Old Toad never gets up without benefits. He must have found some great fortune to be trapped here. Brother Lin, is your friend trapped in this stone tower? Xi Yunfeng asked with a strange look on his face, because he could keenly sense that this stone tower wasn't simple at all. It was very likely that there was an unpredictable danger. Lin Sun nodded and said, Please wait a moment everyone. I'll go up and try. As he spoke, he stepped forward and circulated the strength in his body. Concentrating, he carefully placed his palm on the arch at the bottom of the stone tower. Buzz! Unexpectedly, the door opened at the sound of his voice. Everyone was stunned, even Lin Sun was a little surprised. I've already broken the seal here. Come in, all of you. A weak sigh came from inside the stone tower. It was Old Toad. Lin soon saw at a glance that there was an enormous hall inside the stone tower. At this moment, there was a lonely figure sitting on the ground, dressed in a green robe. It was Old Toad. However, his expression was gloomy and depressed, as if his soul had left his body. Lin soon rushed into the stone tower and said, "What on earth happened? Alas, you're a step too late. That congenital Taoism fire has already been taken by someone else." Old Toad's voice was full of unwillingness and his expression was gloomy. Generally speaking, even when Old Toad was angry, he would give off a domineering feeling. He would often fly into a rage and fly into a rage with an imposing manner. But now, he looked dispirited and listless, which showed how great the blow he had suffered was. Congenital Taoism fire. Si Yunfeng and the others all gasped when they heard these words. This was the highest quality of the original Taoism fire and could be said to be something that could only be encountered by luck. "It's good that you're fine," Lin Sun comforted. He had been most worried about Old Toad's safety before. Seeing that Old Toad was fine, Lin Sun was already relieved. "It's not the same." Old Toad's voice was full of resentment and resentment. "I was the first to set my eyes on this heaven-defying good fortune, but it was taken away by someone else before I could successfully take it. How can I accept that? Damn it, it's all that big blackbird's fault. If it hadn't appeared suddenly and distracted me so that others took advantage of it, this good fortune would have been mine long ago." At the end of his words, he had already broken out into curses. Lin Sun couldn't help but look strange. It was that damn bird again. However, it couldn't be blamed entirely. The key was to know who took advantage of the situation and took away this good fortune. "Who did it?" Lin Sun asked. "Tai sect Wang Xuanyu," Old Toad said weakly. "It's him." Ji Xingyao and the others all narrowed their eyes. Tai sect was originally a giant among the ancient orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation territory, and Wang Xuanyu was the leader of the current generation of the Tai sect, extremely dazzling. Long ago, Lin Sun had also heard of this person, who was second to none in the present age. Only a few people, such as Mi Hengzhen, Yi Mo, and Yan Zhanxiu, could compare with him. "Have you ever been injured?" Lin Sun's black eyes were surging with cold light. No matter what Wang Xuanyu was, since he had provoked his brother, he would not let him go. No, he said that he only wanted to fight for the good fortune and didn't want to hurt people. "Do you know what it feels like? It's like your house was ransacked by robbers, but the robbers said benevolently that they only wanted property and wouldn't kill you. It's so fucking aggrieving." Old Toad gnashed his teeth and stared at Lin Sun with hatred. "I see." Lin Sun nodded and said, "When I find this person, I will help you get justice." His voice was calm, but with a touch of indisputable meaning. Hearing this, everyone thought in their hearts, if Wang Xuanyu knew that he had annoyed Demon Lin, would he regret doing so? Immediately, they all made a judgment. No. Because Wang Xuanyu was not an ordinary character. He was more mysterious and low-key than Wu Lingdao, the 13th Prince of Golden Crow. But his strength was indisputable. Of course, the reason why I chose to wait here is to wait for you. Secondly, I always feel that there is something strange here. Speaking of this, Old Toad suddenly stood up, sweeping away the depression and haze between his eyebrows. His pair of golden eyes were shining, and he was in high spirits. He rubbed his palms, as if he had become another person. As soon as these words came out, everyone immediately paid attention to their surroundings. This was the inside of the stone tower, which was shaped like a hall and had a large space. Not far away there was a green gourd vine. Its branches and leaves were still there, verdant and exuding vitality. That congenital Taoism fire is born on this gourd vine. It is shaped like a green gourd, and the Taoism fire it spews is pure and ethereal, as blue as the sky. Its quality is immeasurable. Old Toad pointed to the gourd vine, his expression uncertain. Obviously, He thought of the good fortune that had been robbed, which made his heart ache. It's such an obvious fortuitous opportunity. Why did others get it first? Si Yunfeng was puzzled. Old Toad squinted at him and said, "That's congenital Taoism fire. A little carelessness when taking it will result in the burning of both body and soul. Moreover, when I first arrived here, this hall was densely covered with taboos and murderous tribulations. Who do you think can get the good fortune so easily?" The more he said, the more upset Old Toad felt. "I spent a lot of effort and almost got into trouble several times before I broke the taboos here one by one. Who would have thought that in the end I made a wedding dress for others? Damn, that Wang Xuanyu is really a piece of sh*t. Only then did everyone understand the reason. Lin Sun had walked to the gourd vine at this time and said, "The ground is as hard as refined iron, but there is a gourd vine here. It's really strange. Not only that, look here." Old Toad pointed to the root of the gourd vine. "I tried everything I could before, but I couldn't pull out the root of the gourd vine. I couldn't even destroy it. It's extremely strange." Everyone came over and looked carefully. Mo Tianhe and others even took action personally, sacrificing treasures and secret methods to destroy it, but without exception they all failed. The gourd vine was extremely tough and undamaged. Not to mention anything else, just this gourd vine is an incomparably rare divine material. Everyone clicked their tongues in wonder. That Wang Xuanyu also said so. At that time, he tried everything he could to take this thing away, but in the end it was all in vain. Old Toad sneered. "This vine can produce a ball of congenital Taoist fire. It is indeed not something ordinary can compare with. Everyone, please step back and let me try." Lin Sun looked at it for a long time and decided to give it a try himself. Everyone couldn't help but look expectant. They had all seen the strength of demon god Lin's combat strength. However, to their disappointment, even Lin Sun couldn't do anything. The gourd vine was green and didn't fear any attacks at all. One must know that with Lin Sun's current combat strength, even Wu Lingdao, a supreme king who had stepped into the first tribulation of longevity, was no match for him. But now, he couldn't do anything to a gourd vine. This made it all the more extraordinary. It should be an incredible divine object. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly showed a strange expression. It turned out that when he was about to take out the broken blade to test it, the blade actually revealed a rare trace of obscure fluctuation, as if it was eager to try. Without hesitation, the broken blade swept out. Clang! In an instant, everyone felt a stinging pain in front of their eyes, and all they could see was the dazzling starlight of the snow. In Lin Sun's eyes, the broken blade showed a completely different form at this moment. Patterns appeared on its surface one after another, covering the green gourd vine like starlight. The broken blade let out a clear cry, as if it was cheering. It was actually absorbing the power and vitality contained in the gourd vine. And as it absorbed, the originally green gourd vine began to dim and turn yellow later. It withered and peeled off, turning into ashes that drifted in the air. Everyone was shocked by the magical scene in front of them. They were all keenly aware that the origin of Lin Sun's broken blade was absolutely not simple. Even Old Toad couldn't help taking one more look at Lin Sun. It wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. In the end, it didn't say anything. At this moment, there was a huge and heterogeneous power of inheritance in Lin Sun's mind. P.S. A big chapter for you. Goldfish has just returned home from a business trip and is extremely tired after a day's journey. This is the big chapter for tonight. Give Goldfish some time to rest and it will be more explosive. Chapter 12:27. The broken blade was shining. It was as white as snow and almost transparent. Wisps of brilliant starlight twirled around the broken blade, making it look illusory. It was enshrouded in a pure and holy aura, as if it was a masterpiece of God. In Lin Sun's sea of consciousness, a mysterious Taoist pattern emerged, ancient and vast, outlining the word Yuan. Every single stroke seemed like the traces of the Grand Tao. This was the Yuan character inheritance of the Tao pattern diagram. It was an incomparably wondrous way of using Broken Blade. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for Lin Sun to control and use this extremely mysterious and ominous blade so easily all these years. At this time, as the broken sword absorbed the power of the green gourd vine, a great power of inheritance emerged in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness again. This was a new Taoist pattern, dense, vast and obscure, constantly changing and deducing in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness. In the end, it formed the word extreme. Boom! In an instant, Lin Sun felt a shock in his sea of consciousness, and the power of inheritance surged out like a vast ocean. Numerous abstruse and obscure understandings emerged in Lin's mind, as if he had been enlightened and imprinted clearly in his mind. It could only be understood, but it could not be put into words. This was indescribably wonderful. It turns out that this is an extreme secret technique to unleash the power of the broken blade. It talks about how to use extreme force to slash the enemy. Lin Sun was suddenly enlightened. As early as when he got the Yuan inheritance, Lin Sun noticed that the inheritance of Duanren was divided into 4 parts. It was not until now that he got the second part by chance. Extremity. If one were to say that the Yuan character inheritance was a basic method to wield a broken blade, as for the inheritance of the word extreme, it was about how to push the power of the broken blade to the limit. This moved Lin Sun. It was just a divine weapon, yet there were so many obscure and profound details to it. It even required a complementary power of inheritance in order to release its power. Needless to say, this was too rare. Inside the stone tower, the atmosphere was silent. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the broken blade, watching it release a dazzling light and absorb the energy contained in the gourd vine. From the beginning to the end, no one noticed that in the process, Lin Sun had obtained an inheritance involving the extreme mystery of the broken blade by chance. Of course, Lin Sun wouldn't tell such a secret. Puff! Not long after, a muffled sound rang out. The gourd vine that had long since withered, turned yellow and peeled off into ashes, and even its roots disappeared. A fist-sized hole had appeared on the ground. It looked like an inconspicuous hole, but it gave people a feeling that it was unfathomable. Suddenly, Qi Yunfeng let out a muffled groan, and his expression changed. He had just used his divine sense to probe the hole in the ground, and he immediately encountered an extremely terrifying suction force. If he hadn't decisively severed his divine sense, he felt that his divine soul would have been swallowed. The others didn't dare act rashly when they saw this. "Let me try." Old Toad seemed to sense something. It took out the remains of a bloody skeleton and threw it into the hole. An amazing scene appeared. The skeleton seemed to fall into a boundless abyss, suddenly becoming extremely small and disappearing in the blink of an eye. Everyone was moved. Old Toad smiled and said to Lin Sun, "This is a congenital Sumer cave. It looks like a fist, but in fact it's as big as a ravine and abyss." His golden eyes were shining, and he rubbed his palms and said, "The root of the gourd vine that gave birth to congenital Taoist fire grew from this Sumer cave. It can be imagined that there must be more opportunities inside." All of a sudden, the eyes of others also became bright. "But what if there's danger hidden in it?" Ji Xingyao couldn't help asking. Old Toad was stunned and said, "If you want to obtain opportunities, you must take risks. If you're afraid, stay here." Ji Xingyao was a first-class beauty, like a fairy in a painting. But he didn't hesitate at all, which made others a little surprised. They thought that this guy was really arrogant. "If it weren't for me, do you think Lin Sun would have come to save you?" Ji Xingyao's tone was casual and flat. She had already experienced Old Toad's arrogance the first time she met him, so she wouldn't get angry. Old Toad was stunned. Just as he was about to say something, Lin Sun stopped him and said angrily, "All right, let's get started." Sure enough, Old Toad didn't say anything. This was called Everything Has Its Vanquisher. Old Toad was obviously an extremely arrogant guy who even dared to yell at Fairy G, but it was very docile in front of Lin Sun, which was an eye-opener for others. Whoosh! Without hesitation, Old Toad was the first to walk into the Sumeru cave. His figure suddenly shrank until he disappeared into the depths of the Sumeru cave like an ant. Seeing this, the others also followed closely. If other cultivators were to witness this scene, then they would probably not dare believe that a fist-sized hole in the ground would actually cause such a miraculous change. Boom! Below the Sumeru cave was a fiery world where everything was burning. Only a volcano stood, spewing tongues of fire into the sky and roaring like thunder. When Lin Sun and the others arrived, they suddenly felt as if they were in a furnace, and their skin felt stinging pain. Even if they used all their strength, they could only barely resist it, but couldn't resolve it. In next to no time, their gazes were attracted by the towering volcano in the distance, and they couldn't help but reveal a wisp of shock. A volcano stood between heaven and earth like a big furnace, burning the universe and emitting a terrible aura that could destroy the world. The most shocking thing was that what erupted from the volcano wasn't lava at all, but balls of Taoist fire. Some Taoist fire was shaped like an immortal phoenix, flapping its wings and sprinkling thousands of dazzling clouds of fire that burned the void to the point of collapse. Some Taoist fire was shaped like an ancient tree, with every branch and leaf burning and swaying in the void, dropping down rainbows of fire like waterfalls. Some Taoist fire turned into sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, battle-axes, hooks, forks, and other shapes. They were colorful and magnificent, clanging in the void and releasing monstrous flames. There were even flames that deduced into characters of the Great Way, flashing in the void. Every kind of Taoist fire was a veritable Taoist fire, which was rare in the ancient Desolation territory and had long been extinct. But here it was a common sight. My God, Jean Lucio's voice trembled and his eyes widened as if he had witnessed a miracle. Others were also in a trance. Before, in the tomb world, they had also found several Taoist fires. Although the number was small, it had made them ecstatic. But when compared to the scene before them, it was completely not worth mentioning, and it paled in comparison to the scene before them. I'm rich. I'm rich. This is definitely a heaven-defying opportunity. Old Toad shouted excitedly. Even Lin Sun couldn't calm down. Who could believe that under this inconspicuous Sumeru cave, there would be such a scene that could make any king in the world go crazy? In particular, Lin Sun keenly felt that the Taoist seed he needed could definitely be found here. Whoosh! Jean Lucio took the lead. He hadn't obtained the Taoist seed yet. At this moment, he was staring at a purple Taoist fire in the shape of a saber. However, when he rose into the air and was about to approach the volcano in the distance, an illusory flame figure suddenly appeared in the void and blocked his way. Everyone's eyes shrank and their hearts were in awe. At the same time, the flame figure said, "The Taoist fire is endless, and the Great Way exists forever. Since you can come here, you have the qualification to obtain the Taoist fire. But, if you want to get the Taoist fire, you must pass us first." The voice was empty and emotionless. As soon as the voice fell, behind this flame figure, another 48 flame figures appeared in turn. Each of them was powerful and boundless. Standing in the void, they were like war gods, filling this side of the world with an invisible, oppressive atmosphere. Damn it, I knew it was not so easy to get the opportunity. Old Toad cursed. Others also looked dignified. These 49 flame figures exuded a powerful aura that made them feel oppressed. It could be imagined that their combat power was absolutely terrifying. "May I ask who you are?" Lin Sun asked. He looked at the flame figures and felt that they weren't real living beings. Sure enough, in the next moment, the fiery figure in the lead replied, "We're formed from the laws, and we're guarding this place. Every single one of you has a chance to challenge us. If you fail, then you're not fated to obtain the Tao fire." Everyone suddenly understood. If they wanted to get close to the volcano and seize the Taoist fire, they must first defeat these 49 flame figures formed by the rules. "Can we attack as a group?" Old Toad cried. The flame figure's voice was indifferent and hollow. "If so, each of you will be besieged by 49 fire spirit generals." Hiss! Everyone gasped. If each of them was besieged by 49 fire spirit generals, it would be very difficult to win. Old Toad smiled awkwardly. "Hey, don't take it seriously. I was just joking." The fire spirit battle generals were indifferent and cold, completely ignoring Old Toad. "I'll go first." Jean Lucio couldn't stand it anymore. He took a deep breath and took out a black spear, exuding a terrifying power. Boom! He stepped on the void and rushed forward. His spear swept through the air and set off 1,000 waves. At the same time, the first fire spirit general also moved. He took out a flame sword to fight against the fire spirit general. What shocked Lin Sun and the others was that the strength of this fire spirit general was not weaker than that of the Supreme King, which was incredible. The only thing that reassured them was that the other fire spirit generals stood indifferently and didn't fight together. Obviously, if they tried to break through alone, as long as they could defeat these 49 fire spirit generals one by one, they could smoothly reach the volcano and seize the Taoist fire they wanted. However, everyone knew that if they wanted to defeat those fire spirit generals whose strength was not weaker than that of the Supreme King, they would face great danger and pressure.